Hello, everyone, and welcome to the July 11th regular Legislative Committee meeting of the Town of Vegreville. We'll start off with the motion for the adoption of the agenda. Councillor Curtis makes the motion. Is there any additions or deletions to this agenda? Seeing none, all those in favor? Oh, sorry.
Oh.
Okay.
2023 capital tender results, and that will go on after 7.2. There's no attachment with it.
Sorry, thank you.
And in a few minutes, I'm sure you'll be able to refresh and it will show up if we give Sandra some time.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. All those in favor of the amended agenda? Thank you. Next up, the adoption of the minutes of our last ledge meeting. Take a motion for that. Councillor Warwa makes the motion. Is there any errors or omissions within those minutes? Seeing none, all those in favor? Carried. Thank you. First up is our Human Resource Officer, Kaylee Uremcio. The podium is all yours. Or you can work from...
I would like to go to the podium, but there's no mic, so I'll just go from here so you can hear me. I hate to be a diva, but I can't, I can't go there under these conditions. No, I'll just sit here. I'll start off by reading the background.
It's like 30 seconds.
Oh, okay, if we can. Sure. Thank goodness for Dale. Right? Okay, teamwork. Okay, so I'm going to start off by reading my background here. Is the presentation? It'll be up. Okay. So the employee satisfaction survey was sent out to all employees on June 1st, 2023. Staff were able to access the survey via email, physical paper copy, in addition to scanning a QR code to bring it right up on their phone. The survey was to be completed by June 15th. We encouraged all staff to participate, including our volunteer paid on-call firefighters, which are not included in years prior, so we wanted to encompass all our staff. Participation in the survey is anonymous. We had 77 respondents in our survey this year. We had 40 participants last year. Currently, we have around 176 employees, so that includes seasonal summer students, full-time, part-time, temporary positions, which makes our overall survey participation rate 44%, which I'll get into in my presentation when it comes up here. I'm just gonna wait till it comes up and then I'll get into everything. Let's wait here. So yes, so agenda. I'm gonna get into the demographics of the survey results, and then recommendations. Let's go to the next slide here. So again, 176 employees currently on staff, 40 participants last year, 77 this year, participation rate of 44%. Almost 60% of our respondents have been employed for the town less than 5 years, which is really interesting. Let me go to the next slide here. We can see that 28.57% of our respondents less than 1 year of employment. Between 1 and 5 years, again, the 28.57%. Between 5 and 10 years, 18.18%. 10 to 15 years, 9%. And over 15 years, 15%. And that's, again, makes up the 77 participants of the survey. So again, that's what I just read out to you. So this is all important for employee retention. So since our staff, there's a lot of new faces, it really comes down that retention is critical for our success as an organization in the town. So why does retention matter? Obviously, retaining employees who are knowledgeable in the roles to perform at high levels and to contribute to the organization's efficiency and productivity. So we're always having to train new people over and over again. We're losing that productivity and efficiency. And of course, cost savings. So apart from time and money spent on training and development, there is always costs in replacing personnel and additional expenditures, for example, job advertising, interviewing, and onboarding. So how do we retain staff? So it starts on day one, of course, onboarding, ensuring that they feel welcome to the organization. Offer an adequate or above adequate compensation package, so not only just wages, but things like work-life balance, vacation. We want Additionally, we want employees to take their vacations. We talked about that earlier in the year. So employees who are well rested are more more productive, when they resume, and of course, avoiding burnout. And we're going to give our staff recognition and rewards, so not only monetary benefits, and I'm sure departments are doing this. I'm not sure at all levels. I'd have to touch base with managers, but really recognizing when our employees do a good job is huge in retaining staff. And so I'm going to go through the survey results. One thing I wanted you to keep in mind is that it does show it from 0 to 100. So it's out of a scale of 5 as well. So the 20 would equal 1, 40 would equal 2, 63, 84, and 100 is 5. Does anyone have any questions about anything so far? No, we're good. So question 2, I'm overall happy with the employment at the town of Vegreville. We can all see the results here. I'm going to go through these kind of quick because unless anyone has any questions. And I want to focus on the top 2 scoring questions and then the bottom 2 scoring questions. So the next question, question 3, was a top scoring question. So I have a good working relationship with my coworkers. So that's fantastic to hear because a few awesome things happen when employees work well as a team. If we go to the next slide here. So when everyone's working well together and likes to work as a team, employees who like and respect each other are more willing to collaborate, and that goes between departments as well. And of course, to improve morale, when employees feel connected to their organization, they feel like a family, they're less likely to leave their employment and seek other employment. And of course, increase productivity. So by making people feel more connected to their place of employment and getting that buy-in, people generally have a harder time leaving or want to leave because they have that investment that they want the town to succeed and grow. So that's great. Fellow employees treat each other with respect, so we'll just kind of breeze through these. Do you want to focus on any of these? Should we just go through them faster for
Well,
time?
you can keep going,
Keep
Kelly,
going?
and if
Okay.
somebody has something,
Yeah.
jump in. I mean, you don't wait for me to
Okay.
recognize you.
Okay. Next question. So I feel that managers, directors, supervisors treat subordinates fairly and with respect. So we can see that's a 70 out of 100, so it's a 3.5 out of 5. Q6, so I feel a manager, director, supervisor treats me with respect and values my contributions. That one did pretty well as well. I feel like employees are held accountable and to reasonable goals and standards. So again, that was just a 7 out of 10. I feel I have the tools, resources I need to perform my duties. That one was good as well. So Q9, I feel contributions to the company are valued and appreciated. So that's nice to see as well. I'm given regular actionable feedback to help improve my performance. So that's doing pretty good too. I am satisfied with the extent to which my talents and expertise are being utilized. Next one. I am given opportunities to advance my career within the town of Vegreville. Question 13, the company encourages and provides training opportunities to advance my career. 14, I feel comfortable asking my supervisor for additional training. Question 15, I feel encouraged to take initiative and find better ways of doing things. And 16, I feel comfortable sharing my professional opinions at work. My work is challenging, stimulating, and rewarding. And then question 17, this is another top scoring question, which is fantastic. So it says, I feel determined to do my best every day. So this is great to hear because it means our staff members are engaged and committed. It also means that they dedicate and then care about the work and duties they're performing. So that's really great to see as well. And all these questions, for the most part, as you can see, were almost a 7 or higher, which is really great to see. Moving on to question 18. The pace of work at the company enables me to perform the best of my abilities. And then 19, I would recommend this company to my network as a great place to work. And 20, the company work environment is safe and comfortable, which is great to see. Teamwork and collaboration are encouraged to be and practiced. And then the company encourages and supports a healthy work-life balance. And then it gets to question 23. I am paid fairly for the work I do, which is one of the lowest scoring questions. So just get into this a little bit. So the potential risk when employees feel that they are underpaid, of course, is they can potentially leave to the next employer down the street, so to speak. Low brand reputation. So we always say we want to be an employer of choice or top employer, but then when we get that reputation of being a lower employer, it's harder to attract and retain staff. Mediocre or low performance can be expected. So if they think I'm not getting paid enough, I'm not going to try. And again, no one wants to go above and beyond if they feel that they're not being valued. Next question, again, a lowest scoring question is my salary is competitive with a similar job I might find somewhere else. So with this, of course, potential risks and outcomes for underpaying employees could include missed opportunities to hire the top candidates because we cannot be competitive enough with rival industries and municipalities, and then losing our top performers because we cannot adequately compensate them to stay in their current roles. So, question 25. I understand my benefits plan, so the dental, vision, health, and retirement options. That one was pretty good scoring as well. Overall, happy with their benefits plan. And then, can you see yourself finishing your professional career with the town of Vegreville? Majority, and that was yes. So, now I'm going to get into some recommendations. So I want to say that I think overall the results are pretty good, especially, you know, with 44%. It's a piece of the puzzle. You know, it doesn't show the overall picture, but it does show part of it. So recommendations for concerns regarding compensation. So one of my recommendations would be a survey focusing more on compensation. So really getting there, is there a certain area of the organization that feels that it's lacking? Or is it an overall thing like vacation, benefits, work-life balance? Is it strictly monetary? Additionally, more specific departmental roles, are they being underpaid, or is it an overall staff organization feeling? So maybe doing an additional survey. Offer more staff appreciation. I'm not sure what departments, I know certain departments do certain things already, but maybe taking a more in-depth look of that, how they're appreciating their staff and showing recognition. And allowing for growth. So growth is vital too for employee engagement, and I know we do offer a lot of training and development, but maybe all staff don't feel comfortable or don't have the opportunity to bring that forward. So I'm glad we are doing the professional development reviews twice a year, because that is that opportunity for the staff to feel like they can come forward and bring up that as well. And then hiring a third party to do a compensation review for all of our positions to make sure that we are competitive in the marketplace. To retain our top performers, but also recruit top talent. We have had several incidents in the past month where we have made offers in different positions, so ranging from administratives to operators to management level positions that have turned down our offers strictly based on the wages that we can currently offer. So that's another piece of the puzzle to kind of keep in mind. So with that being all said, I've talked for a long time, but I'd love to hear from you and what you think, how you want to proceed forward. Where do we go for here? How do I address the staff to let them know their concerns are being heard? And I'll let you take it away, everyone else.
Okay. Anybody want to go here? Councillor Curtis.
Thank you very much.
Councillor Rudick will be next.
Thanks for that, Kelly. And it is very encouraging. The numbers have gone up from last time, and hopefully, as we keep doing this, and they realize, and I think there's some stigma around is it anonymous or not, can do that. So, as we get through this and understand more, and they can see that it is anonymous, we can hopefully get some more participants. The only thing that I will say to that is, are you able to drill down further? I know it's tough because we're a smaller business with, you know, the employees aren't that many, but you get a 70% rating. But what if one department is that 30%, and you could help that one department out where maybe they are having issues with a supervisor or a manager or something like that? That would be my only recommendation. It's still anonymous, but then you know when you get finite like that, then you know you can kind of see who's making the ripples in the water. But it also is a way to fix things. So maybe as we get more participants going, that's something we can look at down the road. Because 70s and 75s in a lot of the areas is really good. But then if you want to correct something, it's tougher to see because you just take it as an overall. The company feels this way. Well, maybe this department does.
Yeah, absolutely.
Really good. Thanks.
Okay, Counselor Rudy, you're next.
Sorry about that.
No problem.
Thank you very much, Kaylee, for having this report brought forward to us. I'm curious about the response rate because it's difficult to be able to quantify. For me, maybe you know this, but out of the 77 who responded, how many of those were the paid on-call firefighters and or the seasonal and summer workers? I'm just a little concerned. I appreciate that the response rate has gone up, but just by comparison, I sit as the HR chair for FCM on the executive committee, and we have 250 staff. Let's say we had an 80% response rate on a staff survey that we just did, which is a very high threshold. So I'm just wondering, can you quantify that we have full-time employees that are answering? And in addition to that, I know that it's confidential, but there was a reference that it was a mandatory response requirement for staff to participate. And obviously, you can't force people to reply, but I'm curious about if we had a desired target for response.
Yeah, so right now there is no way of telling if they were all seasonal people that replied or they were our full-time staff because it is anonymous. But going forward, that's building that trust, right? Because like Justin or Councillor Curtis referred to, is we want more participation, but people aren't truly believing that it's anonymous, but it is. We honestly can't see who says or writes what. So hopefully we can get that buy-in for more participation. I mean, the more participation, the better. We did say it was mandatory, and with our professional development reviews, we did ask the question, did you participate in the survey? Currently, those are being done. So it'll be interesting to see if everyone says yes. Obviously, everyone didn't participate. So just trying to get those more, I guess, specific, like I said in my presentation, maybe going out again and having a more specific survey might give us some more information. But, yeah.
Yeah, well, I would be, as a follow-up, I guess I would want to keep track of what our response rate is moving forward to be able to be certain that we're being responsive to our staff and making sure that we're addressing their concerns in a way that's appropriate for the feedback that we're receiving. And I think the only way that we can do that is collectively and progressively over time and making sure that we're answering questions that people actually have. And that's sometimes difficult when you don't have, you can't talk to each of them individually.
Yes.
We do need to have some anonymity. So thank you. I guess this is part of a bigger picture, and I'll look forward to ongoing interaction with our staff.
Go ahead, Councillor Warwick.
So I definitely appreciate this, and just looking at the recommendations, I do really like your first recommendation about the more in-depth focus, although I think what I would say there is, it touches a little bit on what Councillor Curtis and what Councillor Rudick said. If we were diving into the compensation, while I do not want anyone to feel not included or undervalued, I would want that to be taking out the seasonal workers and our volunteer fire department, only for the fact of I would like to be able to see when we're talking about the actual packages, because there is a difference. Seasonal, we all know that there's such a gamma of salaries and whatnot when it comes to seasonal. I know myself, having had a student that worked for us, they may have chose to come to us because there wasn't evenings and weekends versus somewhere else. So I think if we're really going into the compensation, that's something I'd want to see. The other thing, I guess, as we're going forward, is wondering if we've ever done a bit of a overview package, because people will start to get certain benefits, but you almost forget you get them, right? It becomes the norm, and you kind of forget what's offered. Because I think the reality we're going to face, especially since you indicated the survey had a lot of people who've been here less time, the new generation of people, they turn over and change jobs. I don't think it matters what we do. We can do great things to help for a bit of longevity, but I think we know that right now a lot of people will change the jobs, and especially if they're young, they're probably looking at it as a start point. So I think we're not going to eliminate our problem of retention. We're still going to have a few issues on there, but I think it would be good to kind of pare some of that down, because I know that the problem that's always going to come in is we're not going to be competitive with the private sector. That's just not a reality that's going to happen. So we have to see what all we offer. And if we're comparing to municipalities, we have to compare the apple to the apple. Certainly, we have to look at people that would be more on the size of the Vermilions and the St. Paul's. If we're looking at Strathcona County, well, it's not comparable. It's not comparable in any way. So that would be my concern, but I think it's great. So thank you.
Hey, Councillor Bullock.
I can agree with what my colleagues have to say, and I'm looking at this other part of the hiring a third party to a compensation review. I thought we did somewhat of a compensation review before, had we not, CO Leggett?
Yeah, so I believe there's been a more comprehensive one done in the past that predates me. We did do a little bit of compensation review work with Dr. Moore when we did the organizational review. And that, looked at the management positions that were essentially under the CAO line that we were looking at sort of shuffling around. That was a two-part thing, to just give them a look and see if they were sort of reasonable in the marketplace, but also for budgeting purposes, because we were talking about expanding the level of authority and creating new, more streamlined departments, and to help us determine, where the numbers would land in that. I do recall Dr. Moore's comments on that management line that technically reports to my desk, where that our salaries are on the lower side of average. So not way off the mark one way or another, but it is what it is. So yeah, so there was some of that work done.
Councillor Barry.
Thank you, Your Worship. I always like to take a look at how the survey was prepared and developed, because it's often how it is presented to the person can influence how they respond. First thing, every time we change a survey, we make it more difficult to compare with anything we did just previously. I see the seasonal and the part-time fire employees, et cetera, as being quite different than our permanent on-staff people. I would like to have them surveyed separately.
Okay.
Because the aspect is if you're asking for compensation in some of the things, and it's always been alluded to here, if I'm only working for the season and I've just started, I don't know how to answer any of those questions. And I'll come to a point here in a second. Yeah. So I think we need to look at, on our permanent staff, how can we attract good people and how do we retain them? And that's one area. On the seasonal side of it, again, we do have to know how can we attract good staff to come. Now, to keep them, well, you got to try and just encourage them that maybe they can become permanent employees. But I think the two things I'm a little concerned that one is diluting the other. Yeah. So I would work on that. You alluded to the fact that it equated to a scale.
Yes.
The questions were actually asked as on a scale of 0 to 5.
Yeah.
And you've only just translated into percentage.
Yeah, our Survey Monkey, the system, and oh, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to say that, Councilor Barry. The system converts them to that at a 100% scale. It just does it.
Okay.
So yeah, it makes it.
So on the 0 to 1 though, was there a written verbiage for what a 1 might be or what a 5 might be?
Yeah, it would, and yeah.
I'm
Fully
somewhat satisfied.
Yeah, not
I'm
satisfied
totally
all the way
satisfied.
up to fully satisfied.
Fully
Yeah.
satisfied?
Yeah.
Because quite often, people will not select 0, will not select 5.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't. Just
Yep.
instinctively, I can't take the worst of worst and the best of
Yeah.
best.
Yeah.
So obviously,
And you got to be knocking it out of the
often when
park
I'm
to
not
have a
certain of
perfect
something,
score.
I go right to the neutral, into the middle. And that's a dilemma of all surveys.
Yeah.
But I was just wanting to know, it was actually asked on a scale,
Yeah.
and then it gets converted to a percentage.
Yeah.
Okay. The last thing, and I appreciate the work. I'd like to see the 44% get higher.
Yeah.
But I've run surveys that are very complex surveys. And, in federal fisheries and our surveys, when we got a 33%, we were actually, and that was a double blind. So people don't trust it's
Yeah.
anonymous.
Yeah.
And I appreciate the comment that was made, can we do it by department? But that narrows down
Yes.
your anonymous one more time.
Well, yeah, especially, you know, when you
now
have
they know
a
what
department of
department
one
I'm
or
from.
two, yeah, right?
You know, so it's really difficult to do surveys. On the graphs, it might be very interesting though, just for visual, to have the bar of the previous one on there as well. So that just visually you can take a look at it and see,
Yeah. what
has
I
the
mean.
response increased or decreased? And I'm assuming that all 26 questions, I guess it was, they're remaining the same?
Yes.
And worded the
yeah,
same?
That was the same.
I think it's great to be doing this. I just think that we have to keep massaging it so that we know
Yeah.
which direction we're going. Because I think that getting back a feeling from the staff is extremely important. And we need to somehow or other encourage them to understand that we're really actually trying to work for them, to make things better for them. But we're also not a big city when it comes to compensations and et cetera. So it's got to be but thank you for being patient with me.
Okay. Is there anybody in here who doesn't want to raise? Put your hand up. Oh, go ahead, Councilor Lemko, go ahead.
Thanks, Your Worship. I'll say I don't want to raise. No,
You got income tax problems now, I guess not.
thank you for the survey and the presentation regarding the results. It's nice that we can offer a survey to our employees, which speaks, we're asking their opinions. We're asking their opinions on questions that we want answers to. Now, is the questions exactly the question that's stated here, or is there some data in that question what we're asking for? It's either 0 to 5, pick your spot. Not like, okay, so my salary's competitive with similar jobs that I might find elsewhere. That's the question. Bang, okay. So the results are based on the people who answer the questions. And again, like my colleagues have said, we're not sure where that came from. Part-time firefighters or such. And it's good to ask the question, but does it tie to anything else? Like the competitive question scored greater than 2.5. It's more than 50% of the score was greater than 50%. And you look through the other questions that are answered, everybody's kind of happy with
Yeah. It's
a
like,
3 or better.
Yeah.
Now, everybody, regardless of what they're making, want more.
Yeah.
But the benefit isn't tied into that question. You can go elsewhere and get $2 more an hour for what you're doing, but you have no benefits. So is there a tie to that, or the people that are serving it are just looking at? So the question may be pointed to the answers we want, but again, I don't know how you would do a survey to get the answers that the staff want. So good on it. I'm glad it's being done, and extrapolate the data and find out. Now you're asking what our opinions are, and I think we're giving them to you.
Go ahead.
Yep, thanks, Your Worship. And I think those are all great points, and you know, you guys are right. I mean, you survey 100 people, and would you like more money? Well, absolutely, right? Who's gonna say no? And I think to Councillor Lemko's point there too, there's, you know, it's human nature to dwell and focus on, oh, well, I heard this one guy out at a gold mine's making $52 an hour to run a dump truck. Why am I not making that? Well, you got to go out and do that, right? That's not the business we're in. So we think that recommendation of hiring somebody to do, you know, the evaluation of the comp, and what I'd like to see that is, you know, a mandate given to that individual to focus on the things we're talking about here. It's not just about the numbers, guys. You don't work for the municipality because we're gonna pay, you know, Wall Street wages. We come to the table with a lot of other stuff, the EDOs, our time off, our working conditions, our benefits package, our pension. Are the employees that are negatively answering the survey thing taking that into consideration, or are they just saying, well, I've heard of a job that pays $2 an hour more than I get but I'm not calculating all that other stuff as being a benefit to it. So aside, you know, a secondary benefit to doing that wage analysis with somebody to come in and study it and give us some statistics and some comparisons would be helpful in the way that, you know, if there is a problem, then that'll get flushed out. But if there isn't, then we've demonstrated to the employees that, look, we heard you, we listened. Now we took the time to go ahead and evaluate this, and what we've actually found is we're right on the money. There is no issue. So are you considering these other things when you're answering your survey? And if not previously, well, here's the data to confirm that we're actually right where we should be. So it's not necessarily to just to take on that work to say, oh, well, you know, there should be this huge increase. It would help prove to us, you know, sort of factually on paper that maybe we're actually not, and these are perceptions that are out there in our marketplace because people are hearing about outlier wages and comparing what they're getting here to that. So one of the you know, potential benefits of it.
Go ahead.
I just want to go back to question one about how long you've been working. When I look at that graph, I think you have buy-in from all the more of the short-term people, but I'm concerned about the people from the 5 to the 10 years and the 5 to 15 years where they don't seem to have a buy-in for the survey. So I guess maybe that's an area you got to work on and see how we can get buy-in in there to get their opinions after being here for a while, what it really is.
Okay, well, I feel, you know, it was a year and a half ago or so that we sat down and we had a council session, and we focused on what was important to us and how our employees felt about their jobs and what we could do to make them more attractive to stay in our organization. If we're asking these questions and we're at 44% with part-time employees, paid on-call firemen, and summer staff, I don't know how much more we can do to encourage people to let us know where they're at. We have hired your position, HR. We've gone out to the employees and have said that there is growth, opportunity for growth within this organization. There is a learning opportunity for you to take courses, and we have done as much as we can. If you asked 10 out of 10 people, would they like to make more money? They're going to say yes. I'll guarantee you. And are they bringing in the benefits that this working for a municipality has? No, they certainly aren't. As far as what they might find a similar job someplace else in the private sector, we start our employers at a higher rate than most small businesses in this town. I'll guarantee you that. They don't have an opportunity for the benefit plan that we offer, neither.
And that's interesting as well, Your Worship, is that, you know, are the people answering, like we talked about, are they eligible for the benefits plan? Like, are they seasonal? Are they part-time? Because then that would skew the results as well, that maybe they aren't. You know, maybe they feel then they, you know, they're not being compensated well enough. Like you mentioned, Councillor Barry, you know, dividing it into permanent full-time staff versus seasonal, just to see their different results would be interesting as well.
I think what we can do is try to encourage all staff to participate in future surveys. And the fact that we're doing this and we're wanting to learn how they feel about their job, because we appreciate what they do and we'd like to keep staff on here. So moving forward, I don't know if we should hire a consultant to tell us where we're at in the marketplace, because I know not one person sitting here today with what the challenges we have in front of us with police costing, with the lack of infrastructure dollars coming from the province. We're already looking at huge increases in the next few years in property taxes. I don't know if we're going to be able to commit to matching the City of Edmonton operator level 2. I know we can't. So myself personally, I don't feel that we need to take an in-depth look at where we're at, because where we're at right now is what we can't afford and what the citizens, the taxpayers in this town can afford, because there's a lot coming to put on the taxpayers in the near future. Keep doing what we're doing, listening to the employees. I mean, we just gave a 3% raise, and we know that reflected in a 2% tax increase, basically to cover that. We can try to encourage more participation in these, and the job you're doing is exactly what has been asked and what council wanted the employees to have that opportunity to engage in conversations like this, engage in where their future may go. So, but I'll guarantee you, when you ask that question, to get a 50% on that is unbelievable. Would you like a raise? Do you think you can make more money elsewhere? I would imagine that's probably people that don't really know too much about other municipalities. But that's what I feel, and all we can do is keep trying to engage our employees to get, to fill out these. Because when it comes to the money, it's probably the least we can do. The other things about how they get along with their other employees and how they're treated by their superiors and how they feel they're putting their effort in and stuff. These are important things.
Feeling determined every day.
Those
That's
things that we can
fantastic.
deal with. So, go ahead.
Well, and you know, it's, the crazy thing is how surveys are so hard to put out because we always say they go to what they, so like even the feeling determined every day, that is a great score. And and it's wonderful if they're actually coming back going, hey, yeah, I'm feeling really determined. But on the flip side of it, no employee's crazy enough to say, I'm not determined to do my job, because then we're saying we're not trying. So
Yeah.
I can tell you, if somebody asks me, are you feeling it? I'm always going to be like, oh yeah, I give it 110%. There's very few that are going to come in and going, I'm putting in about a 60%, right?
But again, this is what this council has asked the senior admin to take this on, to try to see how we can improve quality of life and growth opportunity within the organization. And I think that we're doing what we can. I mean, we're a lot more engaged with our employees than we've ever been, and we've given them a place to come and talk to you about where they fit in the organization and what their future may look like. So, I mean, go ahead, Councillor Barry.
Thank you, Worship. I do just have one other question on it. On each question, does the analysis of it give you a range or just the final percentage?
No, it does break it down into how many people scored, let's say, like the 3 out of 5 or 60 out of 100. It does.
What I'm getting at is I've noticed here on the final response here, there was no question that received under 50%. So 2.5 seems to be the lowest,
Yeah.
basically, we got. But do we see that there are those that a few are very dissatisfied and a few are very satisfied?
Yes, I believe we could break it down further to look at that as well.
But it's good to see that, I mean, in a survey like this, it's good to see that I'd be extremely worried if you were showing me a 25% on a whole bunch of these. Then I'd be starting to say, wow, what's going on? But I mean, everything was 50
Yeah.
and higher, most of it in 50 to 70,
Yeah.
which is a very good range. So,
Councillor Curtis.
Thank you. I just want to say one more thing. It takes some time to put the car in reverse or change direction. So, I mean, we're moving in the right direction. We're getting more people involved, and hopefully, as we move forward, more and more people start answering these questions, then we get a better overall picture. But it is hard to make a decision still on 40%. Right?
Yes.
That's very tough to change something drastically or to go and say we're going to do this on that amount. So I think we just keep plugging away, give them those opportunities and massage that survey with different questions or whatever it may be. But once we get some more uptake from the employees, then we can start moving forward on some more decisions.
So on your recommendations, will you be bringing that to a council meeting? Or do you want go ahead, Chris?
I was just going to bring that up, Your Worship. So considering the discussion, wondering if council wants us to bring this back to the actual council meeting under 1 or 2 as the main recommendation. So the first strategic option there is accept the employee satisfaction survey and direct staff to begin implementing the recommendations. And 2 is accept the employee satisfaction survey for information with no further action required. And then maybe along the lines of what Councillor Curtis is suggesting, we do a couple more surveys, see if we can get the percentages up, see if the trends sort of hold and go from there. yeah, it's up to council.
Okay. Two?
Two?
Counselor Riddick?
I was going to maybe do a hybrid that, try. I know, you're so
Didn't
surprised.
see it coming.
I'm wondering if there's a way to be able to do no-cost in-house encouragement and continue to ramp up. You know, you referenced all of the efforts that we've made as council, putting money towards this effort by making sure that we have an HR professional on staff and continue to inform our staff, for example, making sure that they're using full maximum benefits that they've got through employee training and our HR support, as well as the benefits that we pay into, so that it would be accepting the survey as well as continuing to interact with our employees with the goal of coming back to this again in the future.
Sounds like a two to me. So, you're asking the HR to continue her efforts with the employees, engaging them right now, but you probably don't feel that number one is needed.
I do not feel that we need to go to number one, but I want to ensure that the direction from council is that we want to actively engage our staff and continue to demonstrate the value of being a Town of Vegreville employee to all those that answered and those that did not, so that the next time we would have increased response from the people that we're not hearing from.
Okay, so I do believe that's how we all feel. Councillor Barry?
If I might, Your Worship, I think what I'm hearing from Councillor Rudick is possibly 1, 2, and 3 we can work on in-house, but 4, the hiring the third party, is where we're not willing to go forward at the moment. Would that be closer to saying what we're trying to do? That's a hybrid.
It wasn't part of the question, though. So when you take the
But
question
that is
and
only
you
the question
expand
administration
it.
asked of me. I can actually ask myself questions.
Okay. Yes. So I do believe that keep doing what you're doing. But I don't feel anybody feels that we should bring a consultant in at this time. And we'll just try to promote that your door is open and we're willing to have the conversation, and I'll guarantee you, there's not one person in this room that doesn't want to make more money. So that question is never going to work out in your favor, ever. Ever, ever, ever. Go ahead, CAO Leg.
Thanks, Richard. I was just consulting with legislative services manager there, and she's saying we don't actually need to bring it back to council. If your outcome is number 2, we'll accept it for information here and keep doing what we're doing. And
Okay.
away we go.
Excellent. And again, we appreciate this because we want it to do as much as we can for the employees in this organization. I mean, we only have so much money to work with, and it's a reality. And, everybody'd like to make more money, and you're never going to get, believe me, a 5 on that question. I don't care where you are. But everything else, just try to encourage more employees to participate in the surveys.
Yeah, so I did go back to introducing paper copies for the survey this year as well as previous surveys that wasn't done, and we actually had quite a few folks fill those out as well, maybe feeling more anonymous. So what I did is I left the surveys with the manager to put in the break room. They filled it out, put it in an envelope. I don't even see, just get the envelope, and so it's kind of nice to see as well. But yeah.
Well, thank you for your efforts.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me in today.
Perfect.
Keep on keeping on.
Next. Director Lefebvre.
Thank you, Worship. We have correspondence and a request from the Vegreville Agricultural Society. They will be holding their annual country fair on August 9th to 13th, 2023. This comes from Rachel Farr, their office manager. The parade will be on Wednesday, August 9th at 11 a.m. Parade lineup will be at 10 a.m. at the Vegreville Composite High School, heading east down 55th Avenue, turning south down 60th Street, and then east down 45th Ave, and finishing at the Ag Society grounds. We are requesting from council to have the above roads closed for the parade, which typically lasts about 1 hour.
Any comments? I don't see
Okay,
We even have to wait. I mean, do you need a motion of council at a council meeting?
yep, for road closure, or the CAO can call it on his own if it's an in-between, but realistically, council's to close roads
Okay, well,
for events.
I'm sure that next Monday we'll close that road.
I'm sure you will.
Okay, thank you. Next up, Director Johnston.
I have,
Oh, right, 7.2. That's right. And did everybody get a refresh on that?
all the refresh brings you is 7.2. There's no attachment.
Yeah. Okay, yeah, I was looking
Some of the attachments would be
in this.
project funding 2 to 5 that
Okay.
we've discussed.
So what we wanted to bring up was that the sanitary sewer force main and lift station upgrades project, which is the 2023 capital works project for this year, we had 4 vendors submit their tender results. We have New Edge Construction Limited at 3.375 million. Excalibur Mechanical at 3.849. United Utilities, 3.870. And Option Excavating at 4.744. The tender results are being brought to you today in the ledge meeting is to not typically, as you know that have been here, councilors, we don't bring them to you because they're typically approved at a budget meeting, so the approval's already been given, so this isn't for approval. This is to show you where we're at, based on the fact as to what we budgeted for our 2023 capital works project, which means that we are over. That price that you received was the contractor's, the vendor's price that he's supplied. On top of that is a portion of engineering costs. There's soils and sample testing done as well on top of that. So if we go with the option 1, we're going to be over budget at a take-in of 3.359 for an option 1. So we also have an option 2. It's another addition to the project. We put it as an extra, and there's even a third one we put on. So I'm gonna explain those differences, and then when interim Director Johnston does his report, it's gonna show up there with some financial details to help us make a decision on our option choices, because right now, I'm giving you information, not pick right now, we'll get to that soon. So option 1, at the 3.359, which is not including GST, of course, because we received that back, is the option of rebuilding the sewer lift station valving and valving controls inside, because they have had regular maintenance, but they're also from the early 80s, and they need to be redone. The manifold that comes out of the sewer lift station that heads out approximately 10 meters, it's a replacement of that. It's a replacement of the forced main line, 2.8 kilometers, 2,800 meters, that goes to the lagoon system. This is a replacement of the vault that forced main goes into at the lagoon system to direct it into certain primary anaerobic cells. This price, the program includes the vaults, the small vaults that go between each lagoon system, so we can, they're called splitter manholes, so we can adjust them by a few inches, so I can get it to flow into this storage cell, or I can adjust it, have it flow into that, all by gravity. So that's the gist of what option 1 includes at 3.359. Option 2 is an additional amount, which takes it up to 3.65 million, rounding off a little bit. What this is the addition of a pumping bypass system. Well, those of you that have lived here for a long time and have worked here, like myself and some of the guys at Public Works and the staff, when the current main line forced sewer line breaks, it's a real challenge. We have no options. We have just time. We can't just turn switches on, let things leak until we get things together. Alberta Environment is we have to report it as soon as we're aware of it to Alberta Environment, and also that reaches Environment Canada as well. And it's a big deal to have your ducks in a row and get the things repaired as soon as you can. What we've come up with, and working with the engineers, And I have to say, it was a lot of information from the guys with their boots in the ground that are having to deal with this. The engineers, let's just say, thought it was a good idea. So I'm proud of those guys for that. The idea was that if we have a break in the line, we put in a bypass pumping system. What it is basically 3 valves and a line that comes up to surface with a manhole cover. And I've got those set at about 300 to 400 meters apart, starting from the landfill, going right to the valve chamber at the lagoons. I could ask Jameson if he got my email earlier, if he could throw that up, it's just a quick schematic of what it is. What it does is now, if I have a break between these two, I can shut down, run an overland line to this one, fire the pumps back on, lift station rolls, the town doesn't back up in 12 hours, and satisfies Alberta environment, gives us a breather and a break to get to the repairs to get them fixed. If you remember the last one that broke was at minus 42, I couldn't buy a hoe, they couldn't start a hoe even if they were plugged in. And I was there very much dealing with Alberta environment, and the fact that our report had to go in, a contravention report had to go in, and yet it seemed, if you sat in a desk someplace else, that we weren't doing anything. It was difficult to do. This way, even at that temperature, we could have the roll of hose. Those of you who are in the fire discipline or have seen the trucks, the high vol hose, similar to that. You click on, lay out 400 or 500 meters, click back in, turn the pumps back on, and you can keep on pumping. And there's different things we can do for minus 40. We turn on a small jockey pump that will run continuous instead of pump and then stop and freeze. And so there's ways to work around it. So this is an option 2. The option 2 price, as I said earlier, was 3.642 million. So we're adding 280,000. I was gonna go 300. The third option is at the lagoon system itself. We have the splitter manholes that by gravity, the flow can roll from one storage cell to a different one, or we can choose the path or the course of the effluent. Also, at the bottom of each berm, probably 4 meters, there's a valve. There's a valve that you can open and force it through instead of waiting for gravity to come. The replacement on those is 82,000 apiece, roughly, with GST. So 80,000 apiece, we need 10, that's 800 grand. We have used one valve in the last 38 years that I've been here, since I started, and we use a discharge valve, which we have rebuilt ourselves once. The other valves, it was when it was installed, it was a really nice feature to have. We just haven't used them. So I don't see the 800,000 to do it now. Their function, we haven't used their function in 38 years. I don't know if we're going to again, is the point of that. This line was put in, lift station was put in, very late 70s it started, and very early 80s it was pumping, replacing a previous force main system. By the time we hit year 5, after its brand new installation, was our first forced main break, and I was here for that. So the brand new line lasted 5 years, and consistently since then it was every few years, we're having a break, and now it's more consistent. The thought that we're putting in a brand new line, we won't need these things to bypass and pump over. We experienced, I know that the pipe is supposed to be better now, the technology is better, the quality of material in the pipe is probably better, but all I know is that it put us in a tough spot not having the bypass, and don't think that because you put a new line, our last experience was they don't last 15, 20 years before you start having problems. This one, unfortunately, was a problem very soon in its life. Funny, just passed warranty and we're having issues. That's some history. That's where we're at. Interim Director Johnson is going to give you some detail on the dollars and where we sit and how that could work and what priority we're probably suggesting or recommending.
Okay, so just before we start, on these tenders that we have here in front of us, that's all in with everything.
The tenders you have in front of you, it's all in everything except for the engineering we've already paid for the design and tender.
Okay, so we're looking at this. These valves, the 10 valves that we replaced at the lagoon system are not part of this.
Not what you're looking at, no.
You're looking at option 1.
Okay, so this is option 1 on,
They're seeing these numbers.
Well, what you're seeing is just the tender results, yes.
and that is for option 1.
Yes,
Without
that's
the
correct.
ability with these new manholes and the overland pumping is not in on this pricing.
That's
Okay. So if we wanted, we would add $280,000 to this price if we wanted those manholes installed with the ability to pump overland.
That's correct.
And the valving at the lagoon, the last time it was replaced, it was done in-house.
We changed one valve, and we were able to change it because it was an exterior valve for the discharge. That means we could get it from this side. The problem why the 80 grand per valve is because they're full of water and I can't take the lagoon out of service. So the contractors, some of them weren't even sure how they were going to bridge because of the depth. To barricade yourself in, dig down, do the valve, and then you're like keeping an ocean away from you while you're working inside. That's why the $80,000 price per.
Okay, so in option one right now, what is included at the lagoon in this price?
A new forest main, a new chamber at the lagoon, new splitter manholes at the lagoon, and revalving and controls in the lift station.
And that manifold?
The part of it, yes, for sure.
Okay. Does everybody understand where we're at and what we're seeing this price here?
I have one question.
Okay, go ahead.
When you went back to those 10 valves, so those original valves that are out there will be staying in there, not moving, still using them as such, right?
We've never used them.
Never used them.
They're shut off and sitting there for 30.
They're shut off and sitting there, okay.
And we'll leave them shut off and sit there.
All right.
I don't even have a little metal tag on those that says don't open, because I don't think you can.
Okay, so is there any more clarity needed right now on what we're looking at? And so basically, if you're looking at this price, there will still be some engineering that will be attached to this tender. Some is paid already, but there will be some to come because they work on a percentage of the finished project.
There's 4.5% engineering remaining on the project for field engineering. We've already paid up to design and up to tender. That's already been paid.
So if we were to go with the 3.375, 109, you could add another 4.5% for the field engineering to go with this.
So,
No?
I just want to do the options. I'd prefer we get into
Okay,
Director Johnson for the explanation of.
okay, so,
My job is to explain the options and what their importance are or not importance is.
okay, so we have option one, option two, then option three is everything, including those valves at the lagoon, okay? Everybody's got it? Okay. Okay. Okay, thank you, Dale. Director
You're
Lefebvre. Director Johnston.
thank you, Your Worship. So building off of what Director Lefebvre has explained, we'll get into some of the costing. We're just gonna keep it open to project costing because the first point of discussion will be for Elks Park or Pasanka Park paving. The total project cost is expected to be $207,000 to complete that paving for Area A. As one of the appendices, if you guys are looking, I think it's project funding document 4 will highlight in red, I believe, which area that is, which is essentially from the entryway up until the visitor parking area. Because we didn't receive the STIP grant, we had elected to just move forward with a smaller portion of the project, which, as it sits, we still need to come up with about $103,500 to pay for that $207,000 project. So, basically, this first page, if you guys are looking at the document, is just information, and then we'll get into some of the options. After this is just gonna establish the cash shortfall and how we need to plan to fund the projects.
I do agree, I do believe that we told admin to go ahead with the paving up to the visitor information. So the second part, that the grant that we never received, wasn't on the table.
Right. So if we're looking at the diagram,
Then I'd have to expand the project. It goes up to the end of the parking lot. It does not go up to the VIC.
Well, that's what we all understood it to be.
Understood it was up to the Vic.
I would say that I said it goes up to the VIC, I would assume. It's short, probably 30 meters.
Okay. So,
We want to go past the Vic then.
we agreed, that council agreed that we thought it was in the budget up to the Vic.
Okay.
So, now what you're saying is, what's highlighted in,
In red is the limit of construction.
okay, so, and then the blue, there's a price tag on what's in blue?
Yeah.
And what is that?
I don't have that off the top of my head. It's in the budget presentation.
So I guess moving forward while we get that information, essentially there's a shortfall because so far we've only allocated $103,500 of CCBF funding towards this project, which using the number of $207,000 to complete portion A will mean that we have to use $103,500 of funds from something else. In addition, do you guys have the updated copy of this? If you have a paper copy, you have GST factored in, so the numbers are gonna be slightly different. If you're looking at a digital copy on your computer, you're gonna be looking at the up-to-date numbers, which are approximately 5% less.
Are you speaking of this chart?
No, we're just looking at the document. Project funding 1 would be the tab.
Project funding 1?
Yeah. That's what we're going through right now.
I can speak to the cost of the blue.
Okay, Director Lefebvre has a number for area in blue, so we can discuss that.
So if you open attach 4, everybody's on that, you can see where the red area stops at the end of the turnaround. And then the blue area stops at the beginning of the cook shack. So that whole area between, that's in blue, was budgeted at $85,000.
85?
$85,000.
So 42,500 gets us to the Vic.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay,
And past the entrance to the washrooms and stuff, it'll take us past that.
that's what we agreed on.
That's what,
So, so we're saying if for another probably $42,000, we can finish this off.
Yep.
To what we thought we were getting. Okay. Okay, keep going, Director Johnston.
Okay, so everybody's able to look at that document. Like you said, if you're looking at the paper copy, the numbers are gonna be about 5% high because they'd have GST in them compared to the digital copy. If we use option 1, the first portion of that is the same regardless. To date, we have paid for engineering of approximately $105,208. That was the engineering and part of the pre-tender package that went out. The forced main option 1, which is essentially the base package using the lowest tender price, is $3,214,390, whereas option 2 would increase to be $3,498,190. The engineering that Director Lefebvre was discussing, which is on the schedule as engineering costs and testing, that amount is going to be the same regardless of whether we choose option 1 or option 2, from the basis being that the extra cost is really associated to valving, not to engineering or field testing that's going to occur. So essentially, the differences in those two options can be directly tied to the emergency bypass A and emergency bypass B, which equates about $283,800. So the chart below, the original approved plan was a copy of the capital grants project that you guys would have seen and approved last year with Director Saskew. If you flip to the next page, we'll get into one of the options. So first option being that we use some of the grant funding that remains to shore up the $103,500, which will be increased if we pave a portion of the blue area that we just highlighted. And essentially what the proposition would be to use the additional CCBF funding to complete this project. Based on the numbers, we would essentially be using all CCBF funds to pay for this project rather than a split between that and STIP, which we did not receive. For the forced main, if we choose option 1, we would have a cash shortfall of about $488,246. And if we chose option 2, we would have a cash shortfall of about $772,046. And this is comparing what the actual costs are compared to what we budgeted, which was $2.9 million. So that the chart below the proposed funding option, it changes what the grant funding would look like to show that we would be using all that exists. There would be no further carry forwards of any of the grant funds. And in addition to that, we would be using some money out of reserves. And so if we elected to go with option 1, we would be using about $42,000 from reserves. And if we went with option 2, we would be using about $325,000 from reserves. The next tab, option 2, shows what reserves are. As an option, we could use funds from reserves, but it would completely deplete them. And then option 3 would be to use a debenture, either as whole or in part to one of the other solutions. Currently, finance rates for debentures are between 4.96 and 5.88%, depending on the amount of years we would take one out for. And then the fourth would be anything else that you guys would suggest, or a combination of anything discussed. Based on numerical numbers, the recommendation would be to go with option 1, which would use the grant funding and keep some of our cash and reserves in our bank account and in our possession for any future projects. And we'll throw it back to you guys for any discussion.
Go ahead, Councillor Barry.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'll have to admit, this is not my area of expertise by any means when it comes to budgeting, but I'm looking into the future, and it strikes me that even 10 years from now or 20 years from now, somebody's going to say why it was wise that they chose option 2, so that we have this bypass system in there instead of having the problems that could be in the future. The situation is we've got an old pipe there right now, and it has to be replaced. So my gut feeling is we should replace it in a manner that does something well for the future. And with that in mind, then I don't really mind looking at debenture so that it's paid for over time, and so that future generations or future citizens, in a sense, are helping to pay for a system that they vitally need as it goes on. So that's all I can say right now. I'm not really good when it comes to big money talk.
Can we just get that recommendation again, Director Johnson? On option 1, without reserves, using up all of our funding, what would we be looking at in a debenture?
So if we went with option 1, we wouldn't need a debenture if we used reserves. So if we went with option 1, it would take $41,428 out of reserves, which infrastructure reserve could handle. If we went with option 2, likewise, the infrastructure reserve could handle that, and it would take $325,228 out of that reserve. And the rationale behind option 1 is that right now a lot of that grant funding doesn't sit in our bank account, and so if we were to use it, we aren't collecting interest on it, and we're not paying interest on it as if we were to take out a debenture. So I think the way rates sit right now, that would be the most financially beneficial option, provided that those reserves aren't allocated to future projects, because we would be depleting the grants. Sorry, I said reserves, but grants.
And our borrowing capacity, what percentage are we setting at today?
I didn't look into that, but I can,
60%, we've already used up 57% or something.
No, we're under the 50% mark, if I recall from the budget discussions, Your Worship. Don't remember the exact number, but we've certainly got additional borrowing capacity.
But we're gonna be borrowing for the new fire truck as well. Half of it.
Yeah, possibly, yeah.
Go ahead.
So we're just looking at, when we were looking under the option one, and we're looking at the shortfall in the Pesica Park, and we're talking about using the CCBF funding there, but now we've added extra to that. So how does that overall impact it? Because we've added another 40, say 2,000 or whatever to that. So now I'm just wondering,
Yeah.
that changes the amount that could be funded through the grants or where we'd be at.
yeah, so essentially the numbers that you see on, I think it would be page 3 as option 1 and 2, where there's money coming out of reserves, those two numbers, the 41,428 and the 325,228 would have to be increased by $42,500.
That other grant.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's what I was checking. Okay.
Okay, so is there anybody against the 42,500 for the addition up to the Vic? Because we need to know right now, because we gotta let the contractor know. Go ahead.
Well, for me, if we're going ahead with that project, I understand we're tight on the finance, but I can't see us not going past that spot. To me, it would either be we're not able to do the project, or we have to go to there. It's the only way that I can see that works.
So, I guess everybody's okay?
Yes.
Okay, so, again,
So I'll leave that.
Pull that out of reserves?
Well, no, I'll pull that out of reserves, but you'll let the contractor know.
I'll let the contractor know, but they'll need a memo to pull it out of reserves. You got that?
Yeah.
okay, so, the project at the Ag Park is going to be over what we thought to the Vic. We didn't get the grant funding from what we thought was from the Vic moving forward, which would have been the half of the blue, green, and yellow. But though that is not a problem there. I mean, it's a very good basin, and that road is very good there right now, and we can only do so much. And because of what we have here in options. So what is everybody's thoughts about the overland pumping being built in to this sewer as we move this force main? Go ahead.
Thanks, Your Worship. And just before you turn it over to council for their thoughts on that, we've pulled up the debt servicing limits. So it's as I sort of mentioned there, our total debt servicing limit is $26 million, $26,900,000 of total borrowing. We have $10,700,000 of outstanding total debt, leaving us with still $16 million available to borrow under. 16 million, yeah. So we're well under the limit. There's certainly.
Well, and we need to remember one other thing. 2.7 million of that debt is setting in, our accrued debt is setting, that is in actual fact going to be debentured right away.
It still is debentured right now.
It is debentured right now, and we are going to use it in projects this year.
Yeah.
To finish off projects.
But the beauty of it, that doesn't actually change this ratio, because we're sitting on the cash, so it's inside that $10 million number, but we've got the physical cash sitting in our bank account right now. And as we'd mentioned, a couple of meetings ago, we're earning more interest on that than we're paying, so we're leaving it sitting there for now. It's making us money.
But it will all be used this year.
Yep.
So our decision that we make right now is option 1 or option 2 on the force main project and how we're gonna fund it. So basically is what you're telling us is, I don't really get it, but because like $280,000 is the cost, but overall between 1 and 2, it's more than 280. Like, am I reading something wrong? Like the,
Shortfall was 770, correct?
So you're looking at the difference between 772 and 488?
I'm just looking between the options 1 and 2. What is?
283,800.
Okay, so 283. So basically, the $280,000 is the difference.
Correct.
In the costing of the 1 or 2.
That is correct.
Okay.
And essentially that represents the valves for the bypassing system.
And the manholes required to go along with it.
Splitter manholes, yeah.
Okay. Councilor Rudick, nice for you to chime in there. Have you been here the whole time? You've heard everything?
I have, and I do have a question. So just further to your question, your worship. So I think I'm looking at the correct attachment, but the math isn't working for me. So I just want to be sure. It's on page 1. Director Johnson, that I see the discrepancy between option 1 and 2, the deficit there. So I guess maybe I'm not clear. The 3,214,390 versus 3,498,190 are the two choices. And the difference between those two, in essence, is having the capacity to be able to shut off a portion of the valve separate.
And still pump overland instead of having vac trucks clean out the chamber and run it around to the lagoon.
Correct. So then I guess my concern or my question that I'm not clear on, and maybe I'm not looking at the correct attachment, is the deficit that needs to be funded in some format, or the disparity between the two amounts that were budgeted versus what is being proposed doesn't seem to add up to the amount that is the difference. So I'm not confused. I'm confused about what the amount that I'm considering funding.
Well, first of all, are you taking in the fact what's the tender came over what we were expecting, and what came in the grant?
Doesn't exist.
Well,
Right. We're not getting the grant.
Yeah, so,
And the tender is more than what we anticipated.
yes.
So, yes, so I guess what I'm looking at, option 1 versus option 2, I don't understand the numbers that are showing up at the bottom.
Okay, just 1 second.
I believe I can explain that too. So option 1, if I'm not mistaken, Director Lefebvre, was exactly what was in the budget proposal that we estimated to be 2.9 in September, October at the time of budget, correct?
Yes, the scope of work was.
The scope of work was the same. Okay, so what happened was, the budget estimate for that back in September, October, when we were doing the budget, was 2.9. That hit the budget document, and finance at the time did the source of funds, found the money, and that was approved in the budget. Now that the tenders come back higher, what Director Johnson's information is saying is we've got, the difference between the budget price and the tender price, there's $488,000 that hasn't been drawn from anywhere in the budget. And what Director Lefebvre is now saying is that, in order to up the project, change the project scope, and do the bypassing system and everything included to do that, is additional funds on there, which would mean now the amount that the budget isn't accounting for from a source of funds standpoint would be $770. So does that help, Councilor Rudick?
Okay, so I guess one other way of looking at it is that we have option 1 and option 2. Both are higher than what we had budgeted for. The total cost for project 1 would be $3,464,246. If we went with option 2, we would be increasing the cost by $283,800, which represents the bypass system, for a total cost of option 2 being $3,748.46. However, with those two costs in mind, we've only budgeted $2.976 million, which therefore leaves us with those two shortfall amounts that we have to determine where those funds are going to come from to pay for either option 1 or option 2. So the two parts to this is establishing which option we would like to go with the difference being the $283,000 for the bypass system. Once we establish which option, then essentially we can move forward to how we would want to fund that.
Okay. Okay, thank you for clarifying that. I think the challenge always is paying for long-term infrastructure is always best, even if financially it makes the most sense to do a dip into reserves. But if something is going to be paid for the long term, if we're going to choose a debenture of some sort, being able to have future residents and future users of this long-term investment, that might be prudent as well. But that is not what you're recommending. Is that correct, Director Johnson?
Yeah, my recommendation would be to use the grant funding because essentially we don't have that cash in our account. And so to pay interest on a loan that we're going to take out and still not use that funding would not necessarily make the most financial sense.
You're talking about using Canada Community Building Fund.
Correct.
Right. Okay. But we still need to get some from reserves and or debenture portion. So that if you go to page 2 of your attachment, what I'm looking at is that option 1 would require an additional 41 and change. Option 2 requires 325 and change.
Correct. And both of those numbers are essentially low by the $42,500 that we're going to use for Elks Sanka Park.
Okay. Okay, I feel like we would be better to spend the money now and do the investment in the valve system despite the additional cost. I think it's money that we will eventually have to pay in some format, and better to pay for it when we do the project initially.
Okay, so, and I agree with Councilor Rudick. And these projects that are gonna benefit the residents for the next 50 years, I mean, it's probably wise to debenture money and spread it over time that everybody pays their share. We know that we have a lot of infrastructure challenges today. We know that we never touched 52nd Street at all. Dale and his department have been, Director Lefebvre and his department have been trying hard to keep up with just manhole replacements. And we know moving forward that there's gonna be lots of paving that's gonna be needed in town. So our question is, do we want to use this grant funding and some reserves to pay for this infrastructure? Or is there a willingness to go to a debenture? Go ahead, Councillor Bullock.
Well, option 2 is what I'd like to see, because I think it's wise to do that overland pumping if we have a problem, because I'd imagine what it would cost, what it cost this past Christmas with vac trucks and what happened. So that, and I would say we should debenture it to share in the cost with residents in the future of this town.
Okay. Anybody else? Go Councillor.
Well, I was just gonna remind you that I already said do option 2 and debenture.
Thank you. So just for what Director Johnson was saying, we're sitting with this grant funding that we don't have currently earmarked for anything right now? Is that what we're saying?
That's my understanding.
I'd go ahead, Director Lefebvre. We've walked away from lots of broken infrastructure to get this project going because it is the most crucial part of infrastructure in our community.
As presented at the 2023 budget, the capital 5-year plan shows what's coming next. Any money left in the granting in a reserve would be designated for projects like that.
Okay. No, that's fair. It was just a question. If we're just sitting there and I know obviously we have projects that we will be using it for, but if they're not going to be done this year and we're going to get more funding in the next year, were we holding it over to the next year to do it, or are we?
Well, our funding from the government of Alberta is formerly known as MSI, and now it has a different name coming forward, is basically 1/3 of what we received 8 years ago. And that's what the future will look like for the next 4 years for the infrastructure funding. So just so everybody keeps that in mind. So there was a borrowing bylaw brought in on Prosperity Park. Under the debenture that we have, money that we have from the sale, are we gonna not debenture money for Prosperity Park?
So I think there's also another borrowing bylaw for this project, if I'm not mistaken.
Okay, let's just go to Sandra here for a minute. Go ahead, Sandra.
We already have a borrowing bylaw for, it is bylaw number 02, 2022, and it is for the total amount.
I think it's 1.2.
It is for 1.25 million, so 1,250,000 is the borrowing bylaw
For
for the forced main.
the force main.
Project.
So, we're already on this project, 1.25 in borrowed debentured money already, correct?
Correct. So the way that it reads, the provincial grant for 1.6 million and the debenture for 1.25 million for the total of 2.85.
Okay, so that's the 290 that we were looking at for the overall cost.
Yeah, that's taken straight from that borrowing bylaw.
Okay, so we have 2.7. What is our shortfall on Prosperity? What was the borrowing bylaw for Prosperity?
Was that in 2021?
Go ahead, Sandra. And Director Johnson. I know this is, you're catching up as fast as you can, and we appreciate it. Honest to God, we do. So,
Bylaw number 11/2020, the borrowing bylaw for, at that time, it was called Selfie 17, was for 2.5 million.
How much was it, Sandra?
2.5. And Dale, where are we at? All in on that project? Are we gonna need this 2.5 extra?
Extra?
Well, not extra, but we had said we were gonna borrow 2.5 on this project. And are we gonna be over that on this debenture?
My understanding is from Director Saskew that we would be utilizing the remainder of our borrowing bylaw. And I don't know, it was for the one we talked about with the TransCanada.
Yeah.
That's my
And
understanding.
we'd be going into that for the overage for the 20-acre conversion, if you will.
Okay, so can one pay the other? Where are we allocating that 2.7?
So my understanding is that part of that is just cash, like, we're talking from the TransCanada building?
Yeah.
My understanding is part of that's just cash sitting in the account right now.
Yeah.
That's unallocated.
Yeah.
So
So-
that's essentially our slush fund.
Yeah.
But there is a motion of council that I could go and use that for Prosperity, for the overage.
And where are we at in the overage?
I don't have a solid number. I know that it was close to 700,000 to make our adjustment for the 20-acre and the drainage and all of that.
It was 6 is what we heard, but now
680,
it's,
I think it was 680.
Okay. Okay, so let's say there is 700,000 of the 2.7 is gone, right? So there's 2 million. So if we were to borrow 2.5 million on Prosperity Park, which eventually we should be able to get back in land sales. Correct? Everybody see where we're going here? So we have $2 million to work with right now. That's already debentured. So on this project, we had already passed a bylaw of 1.25. So essentially, what we will have left is, how much is, out of the, so we have, if we don't borrow, we'll have $750,000 left of that money. If we don't use the 1.25 borrowing bylaw we're already using, correct?
Correct.
But if you use common sense, this project should be debentured. This is the one that really should be debentured.
Yeah, 'cause this is a major infrastructure used for all people for all time.
But by definition, using the TC funds, it is. Because we're still required to pay that. It just says,
Exactly.
hold that money, do whatever you want with
Yeah.
it, as long as you're making the payments on it, we're fine running out the agreement as presented. It just shortens up the time frame on it. So rather than going out for a 25-year, debenture, let's say, I believe there's only around 15 or so years on that one left. So we shorten it up a little bit.
And it's also at a lower rate
Yeah.
because of when it was taken out
Yeah.
by a few points.
So if 700,000 is going towards some cost overrun at Prosperity Park, and we take the 2 million that's already debentured, this borrowing bylaw goes away, one of them's got to be less, because we actually haven't borrowed that money yet, right?
For,
What?
yeah, I don't know.
No, we haven't
I think we
borrowed
have,
anything.
but I don't know for sure.
So where do we borrow the money? Like, what makes more sense? And this is the project to use it. I mean, it's already a debenture that we already have, and it's at a very low rate. So we just take that 2 million left, and we put it towards this force main.
And we keep paying the debenture as if it was.
Yeah.
For 15 approximately.
Go ahead, Councilor Riddick, are you keeping up with me here?
I wish there was a red pen or something live, like
Yeah.
next time we can get Director Johnson some kind of live addition machine for me. I think so. So I think the intention is that we have a debenture for a piece of infrastructure that's going to be used over a long period of time, which I think is wise. And whether it is an existing or newly created debenture is kind of semantics at this point. But I do want to clarify and just make sure that we are in fact using the Canada Community Building Fund, which is intended for infrastructure, in this pocket as well. So I just want to clarify that we're going to be using debenture plus the Canada Community Building Fund as well as reserves?
No.
No.
Under the formula that I'm proposing here is that the other funding from the Canada Building Fund, that we
Yep.
catch up on some of the infrastructure projects that we put on hold.
Okay. That also to me would be keeping with our intention in terms of our strategic plan, as well as setting up future councils and future residents in a way that's prudent. I think I'm comfortable with that as well. So I just want to clarify that we're using that Canada Community Building Fund for the intention that it was delivered to us to continue to beef up much needed infrastructure. So thank you for clarifying that.
Okay, so, go ahead.
We're still using the 103,500 from MSI that we had started with, right? But we're not using any more MSI, because down here we have it at 207, right? And that's part of this up here, right? 123,291 and 323,527. Right, those are all of grant funding.
So I think that we should give you a little bit of time.
We need to, yeah.
If you take a look at this, out of the 2.7 that we have already debentured, you think you're gonna need 700,000 for the overruns at Prosperity?
Absolutely. I hate to say it, but we're at 680 and we've got a couple extras already.
No, we
that
might be
that would
more.
take me back to full, that takes me back to a full, or almost full contingency. So I would like that, because that was my original contingency to start this project, and it's been burned, the contingency's been burned up on the decision made to change plans. Not, but, so I have some extras, but we're doing well so far.
Okay, so,
So I just like to say, yes, I want that, I would hold it for now, and I have good ideas as we get towards the end of this project, that so far we're doing okay with overages. There's a few, but nothing huge.
okay, so 700,000 now moves into the contingency fund at Prosperity.
Yeah, sure.
Director Johnson, you have the other 2 million to make this project, well, there's gonna be some left over, believe me, once you do the numbers. CAO Leggett?
Thank you, Worship. I just wanted, and I don't mean to contradict you here, but I just want to make a point of clarity for the benefit of the viewing public. You'd mentioned overruns in Prosperity Park. There's no cost overruns there. They were negotiated changes in the designs leading to additional costs. So, yeah, there's no cost overruns. They were changes
yeah,
to the design. Yeah.
Where we had it priced at and the tender price we got, that's why that 2.5 million bylaw was put in place, because it was way under what the price came in
Oh, I
at.
see. You're going back. Okay, I thought you meant
Yeah.
the
And this-
recent
and
ones,
again-
but yeah.
And when we're looking for grant money moving forward, we're gonna have a conversation about how we price projects
Okay, but that, yeah,
compared to the grant, and because it pays on percentages and, but we'll,
yeah, but
for right now,
that 688 we're discussing was the changes in designs, not
Exactly.
overruns per se. Yeah.
exactly. So now, what it does, it leaves, basically, the contingency fund is replenished on that project. Doesn't mean it's gonna be spent, but it's there. Okay? So, by next Monday, can you make this a little more clear? Okay, first of all, is there anybody against option 2?
No.
Counselor Rudick?
I'm clear on what the proposal is and support what you've proposed.
Okay, so we're working on option 2. Correct. We want to see some clear math. Is there anybody that wants to use some of the remaining grant money in different allocations here to go the rest of the way around the park? Or do you want to see this money put into 52nd Street, the sewer project over there, and valving? Do you want to see it put towards our 5-year plan? And because what we're looking at here, we would have drained all of this money. And I can tell you right now, one little manhole today that we did a month ago costs 4 times as much as what we thought. So, go ahead, Councillor Bullock.
I think the 52nd Street project would be a good thing to include on this.
So, when you guys figure out the math and what we have left in these other grant sources available, bring your priority and what we can get done. Okay?
For next year's budget as well, or just this year's?
Well,
Talking about 52nd Street, that's something we may think about tackling this year instead of pushing it off to next year now?
if you think you can get it done, if there's the money here,
Yeah, no, I understand.
or do you guys want to throw another 100,000 of some of this into sidewalks? We've never looked at sidewalks. I mean, the money's already borrowed. We have it. We're going to get these projects going. So,
Right now, currently, we're just going with the Vic, or with the paving up to the Vic, with that extra 42.
yeah, I think that there's going to be an opportunity as the feds release some STIP funding down the road, that we can call this an extension, the entrance extension, and we can reapply for a grant on that. It's not a crucial piece of infrastructure from there on.
And it's about 175 grand to go from where we're stopping now to finish the loop.
But we do have a lot of crucial infrastructure that needs to be addressed. And which got put on hold because of how important this force main was. So, Councillor Riddick?
I was just gonna clarify, so 175 would be the remaining portion of the loop past the Vic, but you're referring to STIP. do you mean ISIP?
Sorry, ISIP, right, yes. Right, and then we just don't know the feds, they say, Councillor Warren, what, you checked it out for us.
So basically, at this point, they're still holding that it is closed, that all the money to Alberta has already been allocated, and they've given no dates for any future allocations. They also, basically, even in their budget talks, they've got a bunch of infrastructure lines, but there's no direction that at this time any more money is going into there for Alberta. So we have to plan without it at this point.
Right, and all of the infrastructure pockets are getting renegotiated for this fall. So I just wanted to clarify if we were waiting for provincial or federal money for that, and agree that there are other key pieces of infrastructure that are more material to the functioning of our community. As much as it would be nice to finish this all at one time, there are other pieces of infrastructure that we should focus on as well.
So the purpose is to use 323,000 MSI, 123 of CCBF, and this money is, we already have, right? It's already been allocated by both levels of government to us, that we will not be using right now. You get what I'm saying? Okay. So, we have opportunity here to take a step back and try to address some stuff that we pulled back from that are crucial too. So we'll look forward to a report, what can be done. And I'm not saying you just got to go blow it or anything like that. That's not what we're saying. But let's take a real good look at what we can do.
Okay, will do.
Okay. So what permission is needed to go ahead with the second part of this tender process, Director Lefebvre? If we know how we're going to fund this right now.
The funding part is what you're going to approve. You've already approved the projects for the 2023 budget, and now you have funding for it. The project still goes based on your previous approval.
Will there be any negotiating at all with the company that you choose?
At this point, the only time we'd be able to legally negotiate is if we refused the tender and then went back to pull some items out to bring the cost down. I don't think that's where we're at. I think what we have is the option two that we've decided is important to this community, and so do I. And I think we roll forward with it based on the lowest tender that was submitted.
Okay. And you would start this process?
Probably, I'll see, well, they're closed now, but it'll be tomorrow morning. The process will be that Director Johnston will bring an RCD for you to approve for where the funding is going to be provided.
Okay.
So when that's approved, then I can move forward, but I'll be moving forward sooner, obviously.
And a start date would be important?
The contract reads, the tender reads, complete construction by October, I believe it's October, it's this year, October 2023.
Councillor Barry?
Thank you, Your Worship. It just struck me, have we calculated in here what it might be for rehabbing a particular lot that we want to try and get cleaned up?
That is going to be, once we get that price, that's not in here.
Okay.
So that will have to be built into the price of the land, or that may be in reserves. We're gonna have to figure that out, but we use these two projects, and there may be a chance that some of the money that's set aside at Prosperity doesn't get moved, and it can be flow back into a reserve that we take it out of. The contingency money. Is everybody good with that?
I just want to see that go forward.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, well, thank you. Director Johnston, I know that we asked a lot of questions, but we appreciate, the options that you've put forward to us, and, and the way we think, the more the debenture ends up on that side of that project, the better off it is for the residents today and tomorrow of this community, so. Okay, where are we at here? What's up next? Oh, CAO Leggett, I know I said I do, but you go ahead and start reading because I've been talking way too much.
Sounds good, Your Worship. So, in front of you, there is a letter addressed to yourselves, Worship and Council, from the Junior B Rangers Board of Directors. So, it's a little bit long, so bear with me while I read through it. The Vegreville Junior B Rangers successfully committed to icing a hockey team for the 2022-2023 season in the Northeastern Alberta Junior B Hockey League, as we said we would. It came with some challenges, both on and off the ice. However, we felt the season was still a success. A couple takeaways for our program was the strengthened relationship with our Vegreville and District Minor Hockey Association. We see that this strong relationship will make this a suitable program for our future Rangers. The Rangers have continued to grow our ice hockey program and look forward to working alongside the town of Vegreville for the 23-24 season and onward. Secondly, bringing the legacy of the Vegreville Junior B Rangers back into the community and watching the support of the citizens in our town and surrounding areas rally behind us with full provision of making our non-profit organization a success. This all comes with a great number of volunteers, supporters, and effort, and we are very grateful for this. Thank you. The Rangers are writing to express our interest in obtaining a contract for the use of the Wally Fidun Arena in Vegreville for our non-profit sports team. Our team is dedicated to promoting a place to play ice hockey after a child's minor hockey days have expired, as well physical fitness and healthy lifestyles through sports. We believe that your facility would be the perfect place for us to achieve our goals. As a nonprofit organization, we rely on the support of our community and members to provide opportunities for our youth to participate in the great game of ice hockey that we love. We believe that by partnering with the town of Vegreville, we can create a mutually beneficial relationship that will further both our team and the community. We are requesting a discussion for a contract between the town of Vegreville and Junior B Rangers for the 2024-2025 hockey season for a 3-year term carrying through to 26-27 season. The Rangers request the use of dressing rooms 1 and 2 at the Wally Fidun Arena, dedicated for the Rangers hockey team on game days and practices, more sufficient storage at the ice levels as well as upstairs in the common area, working together with the town to build player dressing stalls and add ventilation suitable to make the room more usable and better suitable for a large junior team. In doing so, we feel this will help attract the players and families to our community and play for our team, with the ultimate end goal that they stay in our community as many have won in the past. The Rangers will be honoring their 50th season in the NEAJBHL in the 24-25 season and asked to have our logo at center ice. This program has been around a very long time, and we look forward to celebrating the milestone with the community. Have our logo at center ice for the duration of the contract. Have a right of first refusal for ice allocation for practices and games. Share the use of the skate sharpening machine with minor hockey in the town of Vegreville. Having the town of Vegreville purchase and install a handrail in the aisles of both ends of the seating area to accommodate the elderly in our community and allow them a safe and enjoyable experience at the facility. Have the town of Vegreville provide a lower rate for ice time. Have a transportation dialogue of communication with other users of the facility and staff of the town. We understand that there may be other organizations vying for use of your facility, but we believe that our nonprofit status and dedication to promoting healthy lifestyles makes us a strong candidate for a contract. We are willing to work with the town to ensure that our use of the facility is in line with your policies and regulations. Thank you for considering our request. We look forward to the opportunity to work with council and the town of Vegreville. Sincerely, Junior B Rangers Board of Directors 2023-2024.
Okay, so we've all read the letter, and we don't know what is possible, what isn't possible. We don't know who's paid for what so far. We know that we do have a contract with a for-profit, another team that's in the arena right now.
We do, yeah. We have a contract with the Vegreville Vipers at the moment for various usage provisions, and believe that ends at the end of the 2024 hockey season, so coming up, this spring in 2024.
And we also know that the junior Bs get a nonprofit rate for ice time already. We know that the Vipers don't. So we can sit here and speculate on a lot of these questions about where the contract is and who's what, but without having someone here to tell us exactly how the other contract is set up and what is possible, I don't know how much debate we can have on this letter right now. Go ahead.
Well, I just wanted to start by saying I actually appreciate that what they're asking for and going through the letter is not a contract for the upcoming season. If we look at it, they're asking for the 2024-25 as the begin. So that's very reasonable, and that it allows us time and doesn't make us rush into something. So I think that there is a number of things we have to answer, but I think I just want to acknowledge that it is nice not to receive something in July that potentially would be starting in September, as we've seen happen to us before. So I think there is a good opportunity to look into that, keeping in mind that we don't have, there is reasons for contracts on the other, because with the junior A team, they require to provide us things like insurance and whatnot. But I think that it gives us an opportunity to look at, you know, what we would do with contracts, given we have other nonprofit, we don't have contracts with them. But my suggestion, if we're putting all these things forward to get the data and the information from Dan, I would suggest that maybe we would have Dan reach out to Cold Lake. The reason I would suggest Cold Lake, I understand their facility is a little different than ours, but Cold Lake right now is housing a team that is in the same league as the junior A's. They currently have a junior B team, and they have minor hockey. They might be able to give us some very reasonable conversation as to how they charge out for all of those teams, what they have in place for contracts. So I just wanted to throw that out there because I was made aware that that is a place that has all of the exact same things we do.
In the same arena?
In the same arena.
But they actually have two arenas in Cold Lake.
They do, and that way we can find out whether or not they are utilizing some for practices, but I do know the games are happening out of, for all three of those associations, out of the one arena at the time. So I just think that might be a decent outreach for information for sure, as well as it giving us time to review, because while the contracts, and there is extensions within our junior A contract also, so it's not a cut and dry end. They could have 3, 4, 5 years within their contract, so we have to look at what that could mean. So that would be my only suggestion, is just because there's another community that I know is very similar, but I thank them for the fact that they're not putting it forward for this year. So I think that's very reasonable.
So we're gonna have to get some more information, and again, the contract, there is options that the other team has right now. So I agree with what Councilor Roy was saying. I mean, what they're asking for, I don't know what all we can do until we finish this contract with the junior A team that's there now, and if they exercise their options, then it's part of our contract that we just can't walk from our responsibility in that contract already. So I don't know how you guys, if you want to bring it up when we have more information, or how you want to approach this. I know, right, go ahead.
Yep. Thanks, Your Worship. And yeah, definitely, you know, we have that agreement with the Vipers in place. I think it's, you know, it would be staff's goal for sure to make sure that we can accommodate as many teams as possible to have full ice usage at all times. I mean, vacant ice isn't productive ice for us as a municipality. So I think if council's interested in directing us to begin entering into preliminary negotiations with members of the Rangers, then myself and my staff are willing to do that, and we can address some of these items they propose here. You know, from that same vein that you're talking about, who's paying for this when we're installing railings in the buildings, you know, or alterations to the dressing room. As we know, the recent one we did with the Vipers was split between the town and the Vipers themselves, but yet we retain ownership of the assets after the fact. So, you know, those would be the type of things that we look at here. I've discussed this with staff, and we're certainly not opposed to having, you know, a secondary contract with another team for usage there. If they want to formalize, you know, our agreements in writing, we're totally okay with that. So yeah, we got no problem, you know, getting the ball rolling and starting to have some conversations and see where it goes.
That's absolutely not what I said.
Okay.
So I said we can't make a decision on whether we can enter into contract until we have this information back. I don't know about that. I have no problem with there being a contract, but if we say we start the ball rolling, then we're agreeing with them that we're putting into contract.
No, absolutely not. We're
Yeah.
just seeing if we can get to a point where there's sufficient language and agreement or consensus to draft a contract.
And I'm saying for me, what I want to know is what our current contract is. I would like to know, like, I think we have to have a discussion amongst us whether we're going to start a contract with one user group. I don't want to give them a false hope to say, we're talking to you about a contract and then cancel them out. I want to be very upfront and honest so that we're not causing animosity amongst the groups. If we go back and suggest we're talking about contract when maybe our discussion is nonprofits, we don't have it with any other group. Because if we decide to enter with them, then we have to discuss what the parameters are to do it with, say, minor if they want to the figure skating group what they want to, because we've never done a contract with any of the nonprofits. So that's all I'm saying is I just would like that information for us. I'm not opposed to it, and that's why I was thankful that they were giving time. But I don't, for me, I wasn't saying let's jump into talking to them. I thought we were talking just amongst us.
Okay, so we'll get some more information. And we'll go through go ahead, Councilor Rudick.
I'm happy to have administration have conversations with the user group and start figuring out how that facility can be utilized in various ways that meet a number of different groups' needs. I am curious about whether or not that railing is something that we should not be installing ourselves. Is that not something that we could be doing anyways, as ensuring that it's accessible or more accessible for a number of user groups, that would be something that could be hived off from the original request, but I'll leave that to administration to determine.
Would you like to see that in the upcoming budget?
Potentially, and they may also have some additional funds in their, the budget that they had to be able to do small upgrades like that.
Okay, so we'll leave it in senior admin's hands right now. Basically, for all the requests, what it looks like, and we can bring that back to council, and we'll be fine. Okay.
Oh, can I actually have one more question? Would it be possible, this has nothing to do with the junior B's request, would it just be possible to get a little bit of a price comparison to some of the communities around, just on the ice usage? Because I had a conversation with somebody from Hockey Alberta recently, and we were just talking about it, and I'm not suggesting impacting people for this fall, but I did note in there was a request about lowering ice fees, but the conversation I had with Hockey Alberta was that we were quite low in comparison. So it would be interesting if we could find, and I know it's hard, we can't go to a place like Millennium or whatever, but if we could go to a couple comparable community sizes, Vermilion, and a few of the others, even just on a side, it would be kind of nice to know what the rates that they do for nonprofit, youth, and for-profit.
I believe you're correct on that as well, Councillor Warwick. I've heard comments from our rec manager that our costs are below what he's known to be average costs in the past as well. So,
Anyone
yeah,
help
we'll
for
get on that.
budgetary planning for the following year if we are looking at any changes?
Okay.
Excellent. Okay, next up, we have a piece of correspondence.
Yeah, we do, Your Worship. So this is from a resident, I believe now a former property owner in town, name of Amy Anthony. So she submitted a letter to us as well as a whole bunch of background information. But I'll start by reading her letter and then just give you guys a recap of what prompted this and where it came from. So. So this is from her. Attention, Town and Council. I am writing you in reference to your letter, fees and penalties for associated tax roll number there regarding water bylaw infractions addressed to myself, Amy Anthony, the owner at the time of 473354A Ave in Vegreville. I would respectfully ask that you reconsider the levies of the 3 fines totaling $500. There was nor intent nor knowledge of the contravention on my part, and in no way would I benefit from it. Additionally, I called the city the first time I became aware of the missing meter, which is proactive on my part. I am a person of integrity and have been a law-abiding resident and more recently a landlord for the better part of a decade. The place was involved in a fire in 2020 and totally reconstructed through all of 2021 and into summer 22, in which the utilities were the responsibility of the insurance company and/or general contracting company. Thereafter, the place was under a rent-to-own agreement where utilities were the responsibility of the purchaser. Unfortunately, this agreement had to be terminated this spring for non-payment, and the place cleaned up and sold, in which a property inspection by the buyer brought to my attention the missing meter. I have attached a few documents for your reference: the rent-to-own agreement, correspondence with Mark Woyowitka, the insurance adjuster at Claims Pro, after we engaged following the letter you sent. He said he saw the meter on site inspections on July 28th, 2021 and September 9th, 2021. My husband has a picture of the water shut off without an attached meter from June 17th, 2022. He had taken a photo, as it can be often a common question from tenants and we live away. This means that it would have been disconnected during this time frame. Sales supporting documents would show a holdback of funds from the lawyers for these water bylaw fines, an invoice for meter install to remedy the issue warmly, and I appreciate you taking the time to reconsider on my behalf. So some of the background that the letter doesn't necessarily go into, as she mentioned, basically the property was changing hands here, and as a matter of practice, we go out and check the meter, at which point staff became aware that a plumbing bypass of the water meter had been done in the house. So they'd taken the existing piping into the meter, cut that, put a new pipe in there, which essentially bypassed the water meter. So for what we feel may be a lengthy amount of time, there was no water running through the meter. We did check the bills, and yeah, sure enough, the property had been being billed the mandatory minimum fee.
Okay, I'll just stop there.
Okay.
When did we see that there was no water usage in the house?
Well, wasn't it there was no, yeah, good question. That I don't know. Okay, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, they picked it up quite soon because in the reads it shows a zero water consumption. We have a list of zero water consumption in the town, and there's lots. There's several from vacant homes. So what they have is they're still being billed and charged for garbage pickups, the fees, everything associated with water consumption is zero. So that's not a stop read, that's a no read, it's a zero read. So then the utilities department went out and checked the resident, looked inside, banged on door, it looked vacant to them. And it's not uncommon to go and say, okay, well, it's empty. So the next couple of months as it rolls along, it's an empty house. Jorgen did say that he went back again not that long ago and looked inside, and in his opinion, there was not much in the house. It was a vacant house. And we have several of those in town. So it was not, and what also was not a flag was that the bill was being paid, but not for water consumption because we thought it was vacant, but all the other fees. Maybe not on time and whatever, but there was payment being made.
Yep.
Sorry, go ahead.
Yep. So what that then crossed my desk, and the issue it presented was the bylaw associated with that has very specific fees once staff uncovers that somebody's bypassed a water meter. And again, this wasn't just that the meter was missing, it was plumbed in and visually bypassed. Somebody had taken the time to disconnect it from the system. So we looked through the was that the fees and charges bylaw, Sandra? What was that? For the fines, or was that in the water? Whatever the associated bylaw listing the fees, and it had three, fines of $500 in there for water meter tampering, bypassing, and then operating without a water meter. Our hands were tied. We were made aware that it had been bypassed, and I was required to levy those fees against the property, which we did. The homeowner's objecting for various reasons, but it's in your hands, folks. I mean, my obligations were clear when I was made aware of that meter's been bypassed, ma'am. I'm sorry, I can't get into the nitty-gritty of why or why not that may have happened and whether or not you were aware of it. My only concern is I've got photographic evidence that the water meter's bypassed. I'm required to levy these fines, and I'm doing my job. So she then, called me, and in the course of that conversation, I said the only option you really have is to make your case to council and see, you know, if they want to overturn that decision, but unfortunately it's out of my hands. The bylaw states what I need to do when presented with evidence of a disconnected water meter, and I took that course of action.
Okay, go ahead, Councillor Barry.
Thank you, Your Worship. Following up on that, I appreciate the added information, knowing now that the meter was still there. So just for my own sort of information in a sense is, when they go by and they get a reading, they get the same, they would be getting the same reading as the month prior? I mean, they don't get it, if the meter is still there, but the pipe is bypassing it, the meter is still sending a message out.
It still sends a message, but it sends a zero consumption message, which again is
The
tough.
zero consumption or the same reading on the meter as the previous month?
So,
No, it's different to me. To me, if you're getting that it's 1,000 and 1,000 and 1,000, then it appears that the meter is functioning, but there's no consumption.
Correct.
So that's the way it kind of gets read. So
it
the
didn't.
only thing that you can assume then is the house is vacant.
Because it's not a no read where the meter radio signal is dead, it's a zero
Yes.
consumption.
I mean, they didn't take the meter out and throw it away.
No, they took it out and set it down, which means it's still sitting in on its signal.
It wasn't even set down, it was still attached to the wall.
Yeah, they just
It's
took
a
the pipe and went
combination of
around it.
poly B and PEX piping in there, and they just cut the pipe on either side and put a new one around the meter essentially. So
Yeah.
as far as the water was concerned, the meter was never there.
So there's really no way of knowing that that had been tampered with,
Correct.
other than
Until somebody saw
the
it,
house is vacant and there's no consumption.
until somebody saw it.
Thank you.
You raise an interesting point, Councillor Berry, and I'd mentioned that to you know, Mrs. Antony here too. I believe that's part of the reason why these fines are set so high. You know, I mean, $500 levied by 3 for a single incident on the steeper side in terms of our fines, but it's a serious issue. I mean, somebody intentionally disconnects the water meter, and we don't know until we lay eyes on it. Because to Director LaFave's point, it's tough for us to gauge usage in a residential property. We don't know if these are homeowners that have kids that play with the hose in the backyard all day long and have high consumption, or if they're folks that take a bath every 2-3 days. It's not up to us to make that determination. And in this case too, we'd gone and checked and seen that it was vacant, so it was reasonable to assume that reading that we were getting, you know, but little did we know, and as she kind of, you know, in a roundabout way confirms that this could have been happening for years. She's going back to 2021, we don't know. Right, and that's why the fines are set so high. When somebody takes the time to go ahead and do that and bypass our systems to try and save money on the bill, there's a hefty fine that's associated with it.
The only thing I have beyond that is this, even though there's an arrangement there from what I've been reading that there's going to be a rent to buy, it's still a landlord-tenant situation. Until the property is actually signed over and registered in somebody else's name, this individual still owns the property, and as a landlord is still responsible for what's taking place in that property.
Correct. And as a matter of practice, as a municipality, we transact with the owner of the property and not tenants as they come and go. And so, you know, she tried to make the case that, of course, this was, you know, some act on the part of the tenant or the construction company. And I said, ma'am, if that's the case, then you likely have a legitimate claim in small claims court. My recommendation to you is to pay the fines as presented and then pursue
once
that,
again, there's
pursue
been no
that debt with your
administrative
tenant or whatever. I said, I'm sorry, I'm not in a position to determine who may or may not have done this. We transact with the property owner, and therefore the fines were presented to you.
Like I say, there's no administrative error.
No, none.
Okay, so basically, we can bring this letter to council meeting for, you know, received and filed, but again, I've had many rentals in town over years, and I've been stuck with a lot of bills from my renter when it comes to water. And go, Councilor Rudick.
I did have a question about, I've never seen this before, and I'm concerned, is there a way for us to be able to prevent this. There's literally no way except for somebody putting eyes on the water meter being bypassed in the way that it was. Is that correct?
Or if somebody's living in the house, if we get a zero read, typically if we know somebody's living in it, we would go and check the meter. So our utilities foreman went over and looked in, the house looked empty each time. So, I mean, yeah, if there's a zero read, we need to know what's going on with the meter, especially if we know people are living in there. But
And the other part, the clarification, just so that I'm 100% clear from CAO Leggett, that this rent-to-own agreement still means that legally the owner is the original owner because title has not changed hands. Is that correct?
Yeah, correct. Rent-to-own agreement's a side agreement between the owner and the prospective tenant. The property doesn't change hands until the agreement comes to completion. So, yeah.
Thank you.
until things move at land titles, who's ever registered on title is who the fines, taxes that weren't paid, anything else that we need to collect, it's who's on title, so. I mean, I feel bad for this lady, and what are you gonna do, but when you're a landlord, you're responsible for the actions of your tenant. Okay.
Okay, so we'll bring it back for information next meeting.
Okay, next up, the housing needs assessment.
Good. Well, this is one I'm excited to talk about here, so bear with me. I just got to get over to that page. So, short and sweet report on it, folks. So, starting with the background. The second strategic goal of the town, as stated in our 2022 to 2025 strategic plan, is growth. Staff are working hard to meet this goal with several initiatives underway to promote the town and help drive population and business growth. Through various meetings of the Economic Development Committee and coupled with observations of myself and the staff, the need to complete a housing needs assessment document was identified. The project scope information, as well as detailed demographics and recommendations, can be found in the body of the attached housing needs assessment. The financial implications of the proposed initiatives are not yet known at this time. It will depend on the implementation strategies we choose to go with. The communication strategy, the goal of this finished report is to have a public-facing document that can be leveraged to lobby developers to create new housing units in Vegreville. As the seed department is actively marketing our available commercial offerings, having shovel-ready housing units lined up and ready to go will be crucial to welcoming new large-scale industry into town. Additionally, a completed housing needs assessment is needed to support an application to the recently launched Federal Housing Accelerator Fund. So strategic options here are, number one, to adopt the housing needs assessment document as presented, direct staff to work with the specialist to amend one or more areas of the housing needs assessment document, or to seek a council proposal for a different option on that.
Okay. Any comments? Go ahead, Councillor Bullock.
On the document on page 9 of 13, I had a question about the, under the housing assessment here, when it went into Century Park, Vegreville Care Center, Heritage House, Vegreville Manor. Homestead Lodge isn't mentioned in here. Am I just missing it somewhere in the report, or has it been missed in this document?
It may have, Councillor Bullock. So, sorry, what was the name again? Homestead Lodge?
Homestead Lodge,
Okay.
or County Minburn Foundation.
Gotcha.
Yeah, it's not in here, so I'm just wondering if
Okay.
that got missed on the report, so it would skew everything.
It's possible, yeah. Yeah, it's possible. I can ask the contractor there.
So yeah, it's page 9 of 13.
I have gone back to them with a couple of questions about some of the usage data, just to clarify it. For example, the table on page 4 of 13 shows that we're seeing, for example, semi-detached house goes from 85 in 06. It goes down to 75 in 2011. then up to 110 in 2016, and then back down to 95 in 2021. So when I review it, I'm like, something doesn't happen.
Yeah, how does that work? So maybe this should go back and get looked at
So,
again.
They've come back with a little bit of an explanation on that, but they're still looking into it too. They think there's potentially hiccups or errors, I guess, in some of the census data that's causing that. But for the most part, speaking, generally on it, I think it was what we were looking for, with one exception. I had mentioned that to the contractor. I was looking for somewhat of a defined number coming out of this document that said, okay, the town needs 25 units in the next 2 years. And when I discussed that with them, they made a great explanation that we're not seeing the consistent population growth on the census side that would allow them to get to just a defined number of, yeah, we need 25 three-bedroom houses, clearly, because the population is growing by this many people per year. So they're not workaround, but the alternative was to use that section that has the realtors' recommended comments in there that said there's a definite need in town for houses in the 250 to 300 range, turnkey, ready to go, not reno and flip specials, but ready turnkey to buy and enter, and that those would sell very quickly. So that, was kind of as close as we could get, because they weren't able to put a quantifiable number on the housing. The one thing, and I think as I'd mentioned to you guys, a couple of weeks ago too, they'd made a pretty interesting observation in terms of some of our age of housing stock and the lack of renovations that are happening in that housing stock, which is creating a divergent graph between the revenue coming from those houses from taxation, because it's based on assessment. So as the assessment goes down, our revenue goes down on it. But yet at the same time, the infrastructure under the ground supporting those houses is going up in cost. So as we're seeing a particular neighborhood with a bunch of older houses that aren't, necessarily being renovated and forcing their value up, every year our tax could go down a little bit on it, but the cost to replace the pipes in the ground at some point down the road just went up again. So the two lines are diverging. They'd like to get together with council through a workshop and discuss some solutions on that and what some options might be, and then a couple of other recommendations they've made here as well. So I think the groundwork's been set for some good collaborative discussion about what we can do to look at some of those issues and up the stock and make some sales. One of the recommendations they were talking about of promoting the lots we're already well into with the seed department. We're taking good steps to promote that and get that out there. But I think there's definitely value in, at a minimum, going through that recommendation of theirs to get together in a workshop, discuss this with the people that did the report, and then talk about some options and what next steps on all of this might be. Because the need's there. At a bare minimum, the document confirms that without a doubt, the need's there.
And when do you think this would be?
We could set that up probably between now and the end of the month if it's something council's willing to do. I do know, talking with with the seed manager there, he's got something he'd like to discuss with you too in terms of a workshop, and it's for the wayfinding signage. So there will be a way to combine the two and have an hour and a half workshop and discuss both topics at the same time and go from there.
Okay, well, we don't, it's kind of hard to schedule everybody with, holidays
Yeah.
and stuff that are coming up, but let's try to get some dates out to council as quickly as possible that may work for him, that could work for us.
Okay.
We don't need to be setting on this, and we need to move forward. Jameson's department is gonna need some direction on how we're gonna use this information as a marketing tool, so. Oh, sorry, go ahead, Councilor Lamco, sorry about that.
Yep, thanks, Your Worship. In addition to the mentioned property, that Homestead Lodge that Councilor Bullock mentioned, you're also missing Lions Golden Villa, Parkview Manor, and St. Anne's.
Oh, interesting.
You're missing those three senior facilities. And I do believe before this study is released, it's imperative that meet with council, because there's probably a number of questions in this as we dive into it to address before it goes out. And I'm excited to see it, and I think it's important that we put a document that is reflective of exactly what is going on in this town.
Okay, perfect.
Accessibility reasons. That may be why that they didn't include those other, because there's no assistance in those buildings.
Could be, I'd have to,
But that shouldn't be at Homestead Lodge. What do they have on staff? They have,
Home care comes in, home care.
well, then that would be the same at Veg Senior Housing too. So they don't really fall into that accessibility for what their needs are compared to what these facilities are. These facilities have registered staff that help them, assist them. But I mean,
Still should be part of it.
you would think so.
As part of another area, because they're still housing.
Yeah, those ones, yeah, well, Homestead Lodge I thought would be in there. As far as Veg Senior Housing goes, those are subsidized rentals, and you know, those people don't receive any medical care or any assistance. There's no meals or anything like that is provided in those other ones. They're basically a rental, but a subsidized rental. Okay, so let's see what we can do about getting some dates. You know, everybody's in
yeah.
got things in their own personal
Yep.
life. And
Busy time of year, but
so
yeah.
check with him what dates work for them, and then get it out to us as quickly as we can.
Yep, sounds good. And then last but not least, just like to offer thanks to everybody that consulted on that. So on page 9 of 13 there, it lists all of the businesses and local realtor offices that graciously offered their time and insight into it. So thanks for that information.
Perfect. Okay, so next we have the letter from the Vegreville Agricultural Society, Dear Town Council. The Vegreville Agricultural Society is excited to be hosting once again our annual fair. This year, the board has decided to go again with 5 full days, starting August 9th to the 13th. As you are aware, this event takes countless volunteer hours. We are hoping that members of Town Council would once again be interested in driving our shuttle carts for our fair goers. We believe this is a great opportunity for council members to give back to their community and chat with residents and visitors. So, first of all, who's willing to do this again this year? Okay,
I'm already volunteering all 5 days with another group, so.
Councilor Rudick, even with the driving infractions that you had last year, you're still in?
You betcha.
Okay.
I'm gonna drive even faster.
So if you could contact Rachel and let her know that basically almost all the council, except for Councilor Barry, he's reneged on his responsibilities. Or that he is volunteering some other part.
I'll be working the beer garden every day.
Yeah. So myself personally, I think that the first couple of days I'll be able to make it, but then I'll be leaving on my holiday. So if she could give us a schedule that works, and then get it to you, and then the councilors will fill in what dates work for them.
Perfect.
Okay, thank you. Oh yeah, then the letter. Okay, so this is from Kalamea City Council, and it's from the Deputy Mayor. Dear Mayor McPhee, on behalf of the people of Kalamea, I would like to express our sincere gratitude to Canada for its significant assistance and support extended to Ukraine. We are incredibly grateful for your community's commitment during these challenging times. As we strive to improve the well-being of our community, we aim to further strengthen the bonds of friendship and cooperation between our two nations. We are pleased to acknowledge that the Twinning Committee already exists as a dedicated platform for dialogue and collaboration. We highly value the efforts invested in its establishment and now seek to enhance its effectiveness through practical and meaningful incentives. In light of this, we propose deepening the cooperation between Kalamea and Vegreville through the Twinning Committee by identifying specific areas of collaboration that will maximize the benefits for our communities. We kindly request to consider the possibility of conducting an online meeting at a convenient time for you to inaugurate this phase of the Twinning Committee's activity. We believe that by engaging in practical cooperations in these areas, we can strengthen the ties between our communities and achieve mutual beneficial outcomes. It's pretty blurry. Couldn't really read that word.
Yeah.
Okay, so we do have a twinning agreement with the city, and I know they've been sending me some emails back and forth, the mayor, and they've been translated, and I know that we probably should encourage a little more cooperation, and you know, I know that this community's been very busy with the Vegreville and Area Stands with Ukraine Committee and welcoming these displaced Ukrainians here, but I think that it's worthwhile that we try to set up a meeting and just to see how we can help. And, you know, right now, who was on that committee to begin with? Was Councilor Rudick and myself and you?
Yes, that's correct.
Yeah. It's us three.
Okay. So let's see what we can arrange. Sandra, if you can do something, and I don't know exactly what their needs are, but I think we can reach out and hopefully we can support them in some way. Okay. Next up is roundtable. Councilor Rudick, anything you'd like to report on?
Just wanted to let you know that we're meeting this week as FCM executive, talking about our upcoming year, advocacy on a variety of issues that are important to those of us in Vegreville and other places. So we just had our executive from the different caucuses across the country in our executive meeting this week to talk about important things like infrastructure funding and some of the announcements that the federal government made about increased investment in the National Adaptation Fund and disaster mitigation, some of which would be important for those of us that have wastewater considerations, like town of Vegreville, for example. And the other question, I just wanted to follow up that we had a previous conversation about, or I had mentioned the concern about the vandalism of the Pride crosswalk and our security cameras, and I just wanted to make sure that we didn't lose the follow-up in terms of how we're going to be monitoring and following up on those kinds of things. And that's it.
So were we able to identify anything off the footage?
We were not, Your Worship. There's, you know, we never heard back from the bank across the street if they had an angle that caught plates and that type of thing, so.
Let's reach out to the bank again.
Oh, sorry, Your Worship. I did have one more. I had a question from a previous report or contract that CAO Leggett had shared about the social center, and I just wanted to find out if there had been further conversation. It may have been when I was on leave, so I'm just curious where the contractor conversation is with the social center that was shared back in June, maybe even in May.
Are you referring to, will we be hiring someone on a contract to look after the social center? Is that what you're referring to?
I'm just referring to the agreement that was shared via email about the previous contract that was in place and what things were looking like at this point.
I do recall that, yeah, that was, I'd sent out the existing one there, so I'll have to double check with the manager of Parks and Rec and see where he's at on that initiative.
Thank you.
So for next meeting? Good. Councilor Werba, let's happening at the lake?
I was going to just say, I literally, as you know, I was down east 2 out of 3 weeks and then went to the lake. So I haven't had much other than, people just reaching out about, the activities going on in town. Actually, people are saying positive things about driving because people travel a lot more in the summer, I think, than they do in the winter. And they're saying that it's nice to see that there's action going on in Vegreville. They're noting that, but that's all I had. I didn't get any personal calls at home.
Okay, folks, she's waiting for some calls.
Waiting for calls.
Councillor Barry.
Thank you, Your Worship. Actually, it's been very quiet for myself as well. Did take in the fireworks. I thought that it was very enjoyable. I thought there could have maybe had a little bit more variety in color, and I kind of missed out on not having the ones that go way up high and explode and then multiply. But I thought it was a pretty good fireworks show. It was unfortunate the weather kind of kiboshed a little bit of the activities there, because it certainly looked like it was very, very busy. And I won't say it was amusing, but I did notice there was a lot of people come past my place on the color run that were getting very wet, unfortunately, at the end. It was really a shame that the rain didn't hold off another hour. So I too have not had any telephone calls at home.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Bullock.
Yeah. Sorry, thanks, Your Worship. So anyways, back on June 28th, from Spring Caucus, I met Trent Forsberg. He had spoke with Victim Services there. He reached out to me to have a meeting with me, a Zoom meeting, so we did. So himself, Lori B. Campbell, manager, Victim Services Program, and Tia Murphy from the Government of Alberta as well. And they're still working on this, on the new way they're going to structure victim services. So currently there's about 60 boards right now, and they all could have different levels of care. So what's proposed is a superstructure of 4 RCMP districts under superintendent and a funding model of 4 societies instead of 60. So he's just reassuring everybody that people aren't going to be pushed out of their jobs or anything like that. They're just going to be brought over into this new system. So, and it's going to have 1 board and CEO per region. And the short of it is, they're hoping to have this rolled out by about April 1st of 2024. So just a touch base on that for everybody. The Pesinka days, I took in the last day of the Pesinka Festival. It was really great. The performances were fantastic. A lot of vendors packed, and there were still a lot of people on Sunday. And some of the vendors I talked to out there said it was the busiest one they've experienced since they have been coming. So it was fantastic.
Thank you very much. Councillor Lemko.
Thanks, Your Worship. A few items I'd like to just share. Extend a thank you to the work of Jameson and his team regarding Canada Day. They put together a fantastic event. Unfortunately, the rain came and didn't damper the spirits of many of the people in the fun run and those vendors that were there. I hear the fireworks were great. I was full intention of seeing the fireworks, but I fell asleep on the couch. And I missed the best fireworks in the last decade. Moving on, kudos to Director Lefebvre. I spent the weekend at the Pesinka Festival, and on Saturday night, approximately 8 o'clock, I got a request from some folks in there that the water was shut off to the grounds. There was no water. Vendors had no water. I reached out to Dale and said, hey, do you know what's going on here? And Dale, if you could explain what happened there and what the town did to mitigate the challenge that was there.
Our lead hand, Tim Dowling, and another town employee, Derek, had gone there with the hydrovac truck. They had a plug sewer at the multiplex center on Friday, and they had to get that unplugged and rolling. And then on Saturday, the main line leaving the grounds had plugged. So they had to get the sewer machine out and spend some time hitting it from both sides before they were able to break it free. And the manager of the facility area of the ag grounds. His name is Stacy, I believe, had elected to shut some of the water off so it would stop flowing and overflowing. So we managed to get it freed up and then turn the water back on. There's a lot of discussion going on in the background because with that many people and we're not able to fix this, what are we going to do? And we already had a plan of starting to organize a plan B. So things were happening while everyone was having fun and dancing. So.
And just kudos to the staff that took time off to get that. I mean, I've been going to the festival for a number of years, and this is the busiest festival that we've seen since the 80s. There were people there. I worked the information booth on Friday from 11 till 5, and I will say that the amount of people that went through there, 90% of them I did not know, which is great to see the amount of those people coming to the festival. And the smiles on everyone's faces, the lineups to the food trucks was just pleasant to see in our community. Moving on, the Vegreville Stands With Ukraine committee continues to do great work. And the reason I add this is that we had a request come in to the Vegreville Supports Ukraine email account regarding a family that is arriving on July 13th. Tomorrow night at midnight, they're coming here. This email came a week ago that they would like assistance from us. So the father and I believe one son, maybe two sons are coming to set up, and the wife and another child are coming in a little later. Committees, as we speak, is reaching out to the community to furnish a suite in town, and they'll make arrangements to pick up those families. Challenge we have is that the lockbox on the museum is sticking or not working, and the lady who operates the donation center at the museum for us continues to contact Dave, Councillor Barry, to go and with his key or the key in the lockbox and jiggle or whatever. Is there an opportunity maybe to either fix lockbox or get the committee a key? Again, thanks to those people on that committee who continue to do marvelous work in welcoming another family of 5 to our community. And that's my report, boss.
Thank you. Councillor Curtis.
Thank you very much. I pretty much had the Canada Day events and the Pasanka Festival as well. I was really busy, and glad to see that our Canada Day event went off really well, even though with the rain. So busy time in town, and happy everybody's having some fun this summer. Thank you.
So, I want to congratulate the Agriculture Society on a very successful outing again, and I heard about the water thing and what was going on. I heard about the power going down early on Friday afternoon, and the vendors inside were having no power. Again, I think with the size of it this year and what there is for utilities and hookups within the Ag Society's facility may be coming to the max there, and again, but it was a very successful event, and it was nice to see the community as busy as it was. That's about all I really have for right now, so we'll move on to director highlights, and we'll start with Director Lefebvre.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just a quick one on the Prosperity Industrial Park. There's more Master Control Center work was happening at the lift station. We were getting some work done last week on insulating some hydrants and leveling off some ditches and fine grading our water flows, installing more hydrants. And then as the rain happened just yesterday, for example, today they're back to pumping some water and dewatering some of the clay and drying it up. So we're getting busy and ramping back up over there, which is nice to see. And I will call that my director's highlight.
What have we, for timelines with utility services? We've talked to ATCO and Tal.
I do not have an update other than they were doing the design out through the late part of the winter and the spring, and the last time we met with them, ATCO Gas, had said it would be a fall install because of the effort needed to run an intermediate line from the station out to Prosperity, which takes it right past the egg grounds, right by the arena. It's going to be a tough one, so,
Okay,
this fall.
thank you. Director Johnston.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just over the past few weeks, been working with staff to improve the flow of information and increase some of the turnaround time. So with that, as of this afternoon, we have the June bank rec complete, which is quicker than it has been in the last few months, so that's good. And then with that, we'll be pulling a variance report as at June 30th and providing an update in the next week. And I guess my understanding is you didn't receive a first quarter one. So do you want two separate, or do you want one that's inclusive up to the 6 month period?
On the budget?
Budget to actuals.
Yeah.
Do you want it done quarterly, or do you want just everything up to June 30th?
We didn't have already one?
I don't think you did when I looked back, but
Senator, do you know? I thought we did. But that's fine. So, I mean, you can bring us half, or the next quarter, bring everything to us. Yeah, I mean, we'd be very interested to see where we're at on the projects and where we're still hopefully close to the numbers that we said we were going to be in.
optimistically.
Yeah, you know.
So we'll get that done, and that's the update.
Okay. And again, on behalf of council, thanks. I know that you're new to this position, and it must be a little challenging, you know. These people can be intimidating at times when they're asking you to do stuff, so, or maybe that was me, I can't remember, but.
Well, I appreciate that, and we'll continue to get you what we can.
Okay, thank you. Next up, CAO highlights.
Thanks, Your Worship. So 3 reports to go over here with you briefly. First one being the action item list. And so just to let you know, I'd asked staff to go through these there in my absence yesterday and put an update on it. So quite a few items noted as complete, and bike park being one of them, and then the timeline for the Pasanka Park paving, which we talked about tonight. So nothing really further to update on that, unless council has any questions on the action item sheet. I'll move on to the capital and special projects.
Well, I'll let you know that item 67, I've actually contacted Blanchette there, yep, and told them, you know, how disappointed we are. I am personally, for sure. We expected this last fall.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay. Yep.
And they said, well, you know, we had to negotiate with transportation for 9 months. And as the conversation went on, the second conversation, they phoned me back, and I said, well, you know, it is what it is, I guess, but you're supposed to know what you're doing. Oh, no, we do it all the time. So then if you do it all the time, then why didn't you tell us that it was going to be this long? So 2 months ago is what they told me the approval was. They said that they had negotiated through you that the signs will be up before the rodeo. I continue to let them know that, again, as far as council and the citizens of Vegreville, what we thought the timelines would be, that we were very disappointed. And if they're going to have them done by the end of the month, if that's the best they can do, then that's the best they can do. But they didn't confirm that. What they confirmed is that they'll be done before the rodeo. I know. I know. So, and then they had their, I guess their complaints department phoned me back, and again, I'm not happy with they're really good with transportation, or they had no idea they had 9 months to negotiate. So they can't claim both. So basically, they said that they will include me in any more emails. They'll CC me in them, and they feel that this is not their fault, and basically, and I think they're going to try to not do it by the end of the month. I think they're going to try to push it right till the day of the fair. Again, if we're willing to accept somebody we're paying that kind of money to keep jerking our chain? No way. I don't know how much money we got invested already. We've given them money? Do they have a check of ours already?
There was a deposit up front to get the project going, yeah.
They haven't built the signs.
Nope. No, and that was.
No, they never build them, they say. We never build them. I said, really? They're such,
They told me that in one of the conversations as well, that until they had approval from transportation for the locations, they didn't want to start building the signs in case they needed to alter where the screw piles were going and subsequently where they bolted into the signs, just in case.
but they deal with the transportation every day. But it was surprising that they had to negotiate with them. Anyway, on a personal note, I cannot stand this much longer. So it is a pain in our, you know what, as council, that we've made this commitment, we hired a company, and the ball just keeps getting dropped. And I let them know. So felt pretty good when I was done. 5 years. Okay, so not all of it is the sign company's fault, but we looked at this and we were expecting 4 years ago, 3 years ago, 2 years ago, last year, and it just hasn't got there. So anyway, I'm sure that moving forward, if there's any more delays, that they will let me know.
Very good.
Is there anything else on this action item that anybody would like to have a conversation about? Okay. Moving on.
All right, rolling into capital and special projects. Happy to report here that we're now down to just a handful of projects that haven't had any action on them. And again, those are some that, you know, by a large account, we're going to leave until fall and late season projects. But seeing good movement on most of it. The one to note there is the hot tub anti-entrapment. So that the manager of Parks and Rec and Facilities was able to come up with a solution there. So we scheduled that work to happen for the shutdown in September. That's item 29. And we're doing an option there that's going to be low cost. It won't be 40 grand to tear the hot tub apart. It's basically going to be a grate going over the box. And so yeah, he was able to find that would be satisfactory to the proper safety authorities. So that's really good. Yeah, other than that, same thing, unless you guys have any specific questions on those projects.
Anybody?
I guess the legend from green is done.
No,
Yellow is started.
green's underway. That's some level of measurable action's been taken on the project, quoting orders, some type of thing. The sort of orangey Band-Aid color is fully complete, wrapped up. So I did speaking to a seed manager there this morning. I'll just make a verbal amendment here, I guess, to number 53, the Pasanka Putt-Putt. The units arrived today, I believe, eh? No, Friday. So, yeah, they'll be starting to go in here. So that's going to be sooner rather than later. Don't know, are we still looking at a soft launch for July 17th, you think?
That's the hope.
Still a hope, okay.
We talked yesterday with the Parks and Facilities Manager, and he's rallying the troops to see who he can spare to put it together. We've got banners that are arriving on Friday. We've got some signs on order just to ensure it's ready to go. It's kind of worked out nicely that we could maybe soft launch it to kind of work out some of the kinks while the road's under construction, and then once we're back to fully operational over the Vic, we're off to the races with Putt-Putt too. So.
Just wanted to ask Jameson a question, and whether you have this off the top of your head. Is our Borrow Boat program being used a lot? And the reason I'm asking this is, and I don't want to be like difficult on the program, but I was driving with one of my sons by. Every time we drive by, it's out and busy. And his comment to me is, who comes to use this thing? But I just wanted to know, like, are we up from previous years? Are we tracking that? Because it seemed like every time I drove by, it's being used.
It is extremely well used. In the weekly report, actually 2 seconds, I can just pull it up for you. Bear with me here, but it is very, very well used, and it's used by people that come from all over the place when it comes to, people visiting the park. We asked the staff to track it on a weekly basis, and last I checked, I don't know, I might be tough to find these numbers right off. Oh, here we go, weekly report. So last week alone, in terms of roaming visitors, 88,695, boat rentals 47. So that's in a 7-day span, right?
Quite a bit.
So there's a lot that goes into those boats too. Unfortunately, we had an incident where somebody was not patient and did not listen to the instructions of the staff to wait for the staff to meet them at the dock, and they got out and they piled into the water. Unfortunately, we got them out. Unfortunately, they were from Sherwood Park. They lost their keys whilst in the water, so she had to make an awkward conversation or phone call to her husband, say, please come get me in Vegreville and bring an extra set of keys for me. But they're very, very well used, and I know that they're very, very appreciative. I happened to be down there on Saturday dealing with some issues as it pertains to power, and I could not get over the line of people asking to borrow those boats.
Wow.
Well, we got an extra visitor to the park.
I had the pleasure of talking to that lady. It was during a market night, the first market night, and I seen her sitting there wrapped in a blanket. So I sat down and talked to her, and she assumed all responsibility for her lack of patience. But it would have been nice if we had had a magnet. I mean, it's not, you can't see very good there, but where she fell in. So maybe next year's budget, look for a magnet because I'm sure this will happen again.
I'll keep my eye out at the next garage
And I
sale
was
for an
just
old
thinking,
speaker, your
yeah,
worship.
for sure, and that's what it would take, because we could have saved her a lot of grief.
We've actually talked about it. This was one of the first times that we've had someone fall in, and the fact of the keys going in. I asked the staff, well, how often does that happen? And they said, oh, that happens all the time.
Yeah.
People put their keys on their lap, they get out, plop. So, Dan and I have actually talked about doing some magnet fishing sometime in the fall, see what we can find. And I think we'll be actually to pay new boats if we start selling people their keys back and their phones.
Yeah. She was anticipating her husband's arrival in about 35 minutes when I was talking to her. So I offered if I could buy her anything, and she said no. She felt that she had enough going on. So, and I don't know how those new fobs work, or they're magnetic, but, but it would have been nice just to have something out. I went and looked down in there, and I'm like, yeah, you can't see the bottom. I'm probably not jumping in.
Good. And then last one on that, it's not on the list, but just to give council an update, I'm a member of the skate park committee there, and so that project's progressing nicely. The forms are going in. They've been working in the heat. The wet weather slowed them down a little bit, but it's still mostly on track to be done here by the end of the summer, barring any unforeseen issues. So. Moving on to the foundational documents list. Also happy to report there that it looks like we'll be all caught up with the Q2 initiatives here by the next couple of weeks. Not noted on the report are items 18, 19, and 20, some of the safety-oriented policies there. The two members of the safety staff are working on that, and those will be in front of you shortly.
Okay. Any other comments on seeing none? Thank you. So we have a meeting next Monday, a council meeting. And then August the 7th, we're closed, the fair. We don't have another ledge meeting until August the 15th, which I will not be attending, nor the council meeting on August 21st. I'll be still away on both of those. So. Okay, is there any other business of council? Seeing none, I'll take a motion to go into closed session. Councilor Berry makes the motion. All those in favor? Carried. Yeah, we'll have a quick washroom break.